The Verizon IndyCar Series on IndyCar Radio.
Green flag flies and we are underway at Mid-Ohio. Ford A. Newgarden with a drag race in turn number 4. Tony Kanaan tries to get to the inside and he spins. Tony Kanaan gets spun around and gets off in the dirt. Several cars working hard to try to avoid Tony Kanaan. We have a local caution in turn number 4.
Bourdais tries to close in now at the bottom of the keyhole on those fresher reds. Sebastian Bourdais stalking in on Ryan Hunter-Reay. Hunter-Reay trying to hold him up through 3.
Leaders at the start-finish line, or I should say the starting line. It's a side-by-side drag race. Hunter-Reay to the inside. The high side is Sebastian Bourdais. Bourdais will grab the spot into turn number 4.
Joseph Newgarden hits his marks, although there is already, the jack came down. This is going to be a costly stop for Joseph Newgarden.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Yeah, we're getting ready for Graham Rahal, guys. We've got a bunch of them coming in right here. The big key right now getting in and out because, as you said, those guys that came in earlier were able to pick up a bunch of positions. As we get the leaders going by us right now, we'll send it down to Nick Yeoman in a second as Will Power gets set to come right in. Graham Rahal diving into his pits right now. He goes from reds to a fresh set of blacks. Looks like a good stop.
From the Pocono Raceway in Long Pond, Pennsylvania, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
Pocono Raceway. We are getting ready to go qualifying in preparation for the ABC Supply 500. Mark Janes high atop the start-finish line here at this bad, fast, tricky triangle. Happy to have with us our driver analyst, Davey Hamilton. And Davey, interesting practice session, 90 minutes in length this morning, and a couple of drivers with some issues. Ryan Hunter-Reay, Charlie Kimball, and Juan Montoya.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, isn't it, Mark? This track is so fast, right? And we haven't been here for a long time. Just seems that maybe the package that we have, our big track package like we run at Indy, and Texas, by the way, just maybe we're missing a little something. I don't know if it's a downforce. I haven't had a chance to talk to the guys, but wow, it's pretty surprising that in our first practice we got 3 cars out.
A couple of pit reporters with us this afternoon to take us through the paces. We'll start by welcoming in Jim Murphy. Hello, Murph.
Good afternoon, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. At what is a gorgeous day at Pocono. And one of the things we noticed here today in the lunch break is that the conditions here are changing. The wind is picking up out of the southeast quite a bit. It was very calm this morning, and it is now up 9 to 12 miles an hour. So it's gusting a lot more here than it was during the session. That could unsettle these cars a little bit. And talking about unsettled cars, we did have that issue earlier today with Juan Montoya getting together with the wall out there in turn 2, and I can tell you I was back in the garage area about an hour ago, and it was all business back there getting that car put back together. They had to take spare components from Elio Castroneves' machine, and they literally were putting on fresh paint wraps and pet decals and turning it into a Verizon machine for Juan Montoya. Very, very busy activities back there. Out there, the other end of the pit lane today, I'm joined by our longtime friend, Dave First.
Jim, great to be back on the IndyCar Radio Network, and it's great for my first time to be at the tricky triangle here in Pocono. Oh, so tricky for a couple other drivers in Charlie Kimball and Ryan Hunter-Reay. Kimball was also involved in an accident out in turn 1. He actually kneed the steering wheel right after he made impact with the turn 1 wall, and that jarred loose the steering wheel. It laid about 15 feet or so away from the car when it came to a rest, but Charlie, outside of a bruised knee, he's okay. They're going to go to the backup car in the 83 and a new engine as well. The thing's a bit more serious for Ryan Hunter-Reay, who is also going back to a test car that they just tested at Watkins Glen last week. So they're going to a backup here the rest of the weekend. They also put in a brand new Honda engine as well. And because of all the changes that they're having to make, they are not going to make it they are not going to be able to make it to qualifying here this afternoon. So put the 28 to the back of the field tomorrow on race day. By the way, the number 28 that Hunter Ray turned around in turn 1, guess what? That was his Indy 500 winner from a couple of years ago. So kind of sad. He was very upset about the fact that the Indy 500 winner got wadded up here today.
Well, Davey, I think what we're hearing is obviously it's unfortunate that none of these drivers wanted to put their teams through this, but obviously great work by all of these crews in a relatively short amount of time to get those cars back together, get ready to go qualify.
Yeah, one practice, right? You got one practice, you qualify, you have your final practice, and the race tomorrow, which I do like the condensed schedules. I think it's good, but when you have issues like this and you're in the wall, matter of fact, a lot of these guys tested, and so it kind of surprises me that we have issues today, but as they mentioned, weather conditions are changing. It's a little more, the wind's picked up a bit. It's a beautiful day. The sun's out. I mean, an absolutely gorgeous day. And but anytime the conditions change, especially for the IndyCar series, these cars are so finicky to different conditions, and that's probably what caught them out today.
Well, we'll have a couple of broadcasters out on the course today to help us through our qualifying session. Let's check in with one of them now. Jake, you become quite accustomed to calling a bad, fast portion of this race course off of turn number 2.
This is the tricky triangle, not only for the drivers, but from a broadcasting standpoint, it's tricky, but in a fun way, because we become so accustomed on these super speedways to watching, of course, Indianapolis comes to mind, and you think about the fact that that's 4 turns. Only 3 here. I'm high atop turn number 2, but it's a fantastic vantage point. When I look straight across, I see the massive grandstand here, but what really is the focus is what is just beneath me. That is that turn number 2 that is actually set up to mimic and replicate turn number 2 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But they're coming off of course, that turn number 1. They work their way into turn number 2, that 9 degrees, work their way off of here. Then that backstretch before they work their way into that tricky third turn. Now, Mark, I think one of the things that's interesting is in doing the 2-seater last year with Martin Plowman, I noticed through turn number 1, almost feels like you're going downhill, so to speak, when you exit turn number 1. That speed really picks up. They will be full throttle by the time they come into me and have to lift just a little bit here in turn number 2. Going to be a lot of fun to call and a lot of fun to watch, not only in qualifying today, but in the race here at Pocono as well.
Yeah, you talk about that. Jake hit on the word that I think is most interesting about this layout, because it is a triangle. Just try, if you will, relate the feel of this racetrack in comparison to other super speedways.
One thing about this track, and as he talked about, I'm going to start with turn 2, because turn 2, he is right. It kind of reminds you of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's not easy, but you get to there flat out, and it's not a very tight or sharp corner. But you get down into turn 1, it's almost a turn 1 at Phoenix, so you got to throw back to a short track to where it has the dog leg on the back straightaway at Phoenix, but it's super fast. It has some banking, and so it kind of reminds me of a short track of turn 1. And then you get down to turn 3, as you said, it's probably the most tricky on this track usually, but it's really flat down there. So I kind of compare that to a little bit of a Milwaukee. So this track has so many characteristics against it. Front straightaway, I don't know what to compare this front straightaway to, except for maybe the straightaway of Brazil when we ran the street race and it was so long down there. But this
salt flats at Bonneville,
salt
maybe.
Flat, yeah, it's so long and it takes so long to go down, but makes it one of the most exciting parts of this racetrack, because with the drafting, it doesn't matter what kind of car's here, with the draft and the tow on this long straightaway, it makes it awful exciting down into turn 1.
Yeah, but for sure. The turns modeled after the old track at Trenton, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and Milwaukee in terms of their layout and their banking. Right now we're watching Scott Dixon put his car through the paces. Dixon in that familiar paint scheme, that target entry, the number 9 machine. Green flag is in the air in the starter stand, and Scott Dixon gets his first lap underway. As Davey said, it's a long haul down that main straightaway. He takes it high to that outside retaining wall, gets the left sides to the bottom. It turns into a bit of a sweeper upon exit, and then it's a long haul down that backstretch into the view of Jake Query.
When I watch him in turn number 1, it's as if they disappear into the wall because of that high line they keep. Scott Dixon keeps it now low into turn number 2. Right in the middle of the racetrack exit of turn number 2, works his way now keeps it high heading into turn number 3.
And he'll see coming into his view as he approaches that turn 3, it says, what turn 4? Scott Dixon to the high side of the main straightaway. Lap number 1 is in the books, 215.178 miles per hour. Again, 215.178 miles per hour for Scott Dixon. Same line through turn number 1, full throttle now as he exits 1 and heads just that quickly back into the view of Jake Query.
There is very little movement in the rear of the race car of Scott Dixon, a sign perhaps that he is in command of that machine. You hear him go past. Scott Dixon now again keeps it about a half a car length off of the wall in the exit of turn number 2. Scott Dixon now working his way into turn number 3.
Looking for the checkered flag this time by is Scott Dixon off a lap of 215.178 miles per hour. Scott Dixon, second lap in the books. Pretty consistent, Davey, 215.496. The two-lap average for Scott Dixon, our first qualifier, 215.337.
Well, Scott set the mark at that 215. I don't think he's going to like that, though. Now, I know that there's some practice times in the 220, 221 range, but you have to remember they may have some tows and drafts and so many different things could help get that speed number out. But I do think that that's going to be off the pace a bit.
Let's go to pit road and Dave first.
An opportunity to chat up with Joseph Newgarden, who goes out next to last in this qualifying session. Keeping an eye on what's going on so far. Going out next to last, an advantage or maybe not so much on a hot day like today?
Well, I think it's going to be tough today either way. You know, you're going first, you're going last. I'm sure Scott would have told you he'd like to go last, and I'm not mad about it. It's always nice to be able to see what everyone else is doing, but I think it's just tricky. You know, it's tricky deciding what downforce level you want today. Or you go last, you're still fairly locked into what you chose. So, you know, I don't think it totally changes your game plan, but it can help you a little bit if if we chose wrong on the wing angle. So we'll see. I think people are going to struggle a little today. I don't know what happened to Scott, but it looked like he wasn't where he needed to be, and I don't know if we're going to see that across the field or if it was just an anomaly with him. But I think it's going to be tough to qualify with the wind coming up.
You realize they do call it the tricky triangle, so.
It's very tricky, man. It's such a fitting name. It's tough. I mean, this place it throws you a curveball trying to get the two ends. You know, obviously that's what everyone talks about is 1 and 3 and trying to get them close. But I think we're just struggling a little bit more than normal to try and find the fastest qualifying balance. I think in race running you'll probably see a very similar race to last year, which is good, but qualifying is a little trickier than it was last year.
Last thing, you were third quick, by the way, in this morning's session. What is it about turn 1 that makes things so difficult for you guys?
Well, you get a little bit bumps into turn 1 now. You have different seams. It's very wide with the lanes, right? So as you cross those lanes and the seams, it kind of unsettles the car. So you're unsettled, but then you also have to be very committed. It's a very high speed, pretty high banked corner. So you have to be committed when you're going over those seams, and the car's nervous. So I think that makes it difficult, and then it kind of tightens up in the end. You have to put more wheel in as you finish the corner. So there's a lot going on in that whole turn 1, but I think the biggest thing is just the commitment. It's high commitment. It's hard to go in there and be confident.
Are you saying you're afraid of commitment?
Sometimes I am. I hope today I can follow through with my commitment. I feel pretty good. I think we got a good team here with Fuzzy Zvaka and ECR, and we should be good, but it's never easy around this place.
We'll be watching. Good luck today.
Thanks very much.
Joseph Newgarden in third quick this morning. We'll see how he does here this afternoon, Mark.
Lap number 1 of the book, Carlos Munoz, 219.582. Lap number 2, he's in front of Jake Query.
Munoz right now through turn number 2. Leaves it very, very quickly, as a matter of fact. Keeps it a little higher than did Dixon. Carlos Munoz now into turn number 3.
Coming off of turn number 3, getting ready to complete his qualifying run. Again, lap number 1 of the books for Munoz, 219.582. He sees the checkers. Davey, that's a pretty fast run, 219 on lap number 2. It's two-lap averages say 219.647 for Munoz. Lap number 2 was at 219.712.
That's definitely more like it, Mark. And he almost backed up his practice speed, a little bit off of his practice speed, but that's what we're used to seeing. And so that gives me the confidence these guys that Dixon really, unfortunately for Dixon, seems like he was way off the pace compared to what he needed to be.
We talk to drivers every race weekend, and they use that word balance as much as anything, Davey, and you talk about a place like this. So what changes, what adjustments do you make to the race car in order to achieve balance, and what exactly is balance?
Well, the balance of the car is so you can go through the corner, the front end's not sliding up the racetrack, or the back end's not trying to come around. So you have to work on that balance since turn 1 and turn 3 are so different, it's a tricky area. Now turn 2, a little easier, but on the balance side of it, but those are the tricky ones. And for example, Scott Dixon's teammate, Charlie Kimball, got in the wall this morning. Well, they may have found some things, wanted to make sure that doesn't happen again with a teammate. And Scott's one of the best in the business for sure, and obviously the car just wasn't there for him.
Iowa, Texas, places like that. Sometimes on warm-up laps you see guys running a high groove to try to gain a little momentum, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. We want to hear from drivers. Let's go downstairs. Jim Murphy has Scott Dixon.
Scott climbs out of that car, and the look on your face says you're not too happy. Joseph Newgarden said he saw you run out there, and he said he didn't think the car was where you wanted it to be, and was his assessment correct?
Yeah, that was pretty miserable, man. Just really loose and not really sure why. I don't know how we missed the balance, but we did make a very good run this morning. We had lots of issues where we didn't really get to run the car. We didn't do a qual sim, and just then I think we missed, and unfortunately I think those speeds there will have us right at the back.
Well, he's got a grin on his face that says he's got a lot of confidence in his team. That's Scott Dixon.
Scott Dixon, and Davey, we talked about achieving that balance and how difficult that might be. How much the curveball, I guess, to these race teams is how the conditions are going to change as this thing heats up through this qualifying.
Well,
session.
And that's one thing they definitely need to stay on top of, Mark, is the conditions. But man, just like we're on board with the Rahal right now on the big screens, and it's a lot of work. I mean, you're shifting down, you're shifting up, even though it's a 2.5-mile race course, a super long straightaway. You don't need to worry about momentum here, as you talked about on these short tracks, trying to make a big circle to get momentum up. But this straightaway, it's pretty easy to get it up, but it is commitment. I like Joseph's comment on that. This track takes huge commitment. Not that all of them don't, but this one is just the tricky triangle. Just names it perfectly.
Lap number 1 in the books for Graham Rahal. Jake, 2:18.082. He's in front of you.
Rahal looked a little bit loose as he left turn number 2, but now has it in a straight line, high line for that matter, working his way now into turn number 3.
It's interesting how quickly the laps can tick off here, Davey, even though this is a big racetrack, a massive facility. Just like that, Graham Rahal completes his run. Lap number 2 in the books, 218.326. The 2-lap average for Graham Rahal, 218.204, provisionally on the outside of row number 1 for now, Dave First.
Yeah, Charlie Kimball here kind of rubbing that right knee. That was an adventurous, I like that word, adventurous morning warm-up practice session for you guys. What?
Yeah, it was less than ideal, but I can't give Chip Ganassi Racing enough credit. All the guys from all 4 cars, it was a multicolored team effort in the 83 garage after practice, and we're going to be ready to go here in qualifying. And I have the utmost confidence that the Novo Nordisk car is going to be right where I want it. We'll probably be a little conservative just to make sure we get it in the race and we can focus on the race car a little bit tonight. I think we were pretty happy with the race car, obviously before I put it in the wall, but we'll try a different tub this afternoon.
I bring up the knee because somehow after the impact, your knee actually jarred loose the steering wheel and it ended up outside of the car about 15 feet.
Yeah, that was less than ideal. I went for the radio button if the radio happened to be still connected, to let the guys know that I was mostly okay. And I was like, man, my knee's a little sore and there's no steering wheel. But it was during that first impact, my knee came back and caught the release and popped it off, and it actually came up and I think hit me in the helmet because there's some marks on my helmet that's now retired. So we'll just kind of focus forward here and figure out what we've got in qualifying. Like I said, I was pretty happy with the race car. We ran a full stint on tires, and I felt pretty good about where the car balance and pace was. So I got the most confidence in my guys, and a big thanks to everybody at Chip Ganassi Racing from the 8, 9, and 10 crew as well.
Good luck today.
Thanks, Dave.
Charlie Kimball. Down to Jim Murphy.
One guy we expected to be quick, we were looking for, you didn't disappoint, Carlos Munoz. Tell me about that run.
Yeah, I don't know if it was going to be to get the pole. It's not always really nice to be the second out. You have to wait the whole field to go, and just like Texas, in Texas it was right away. It's good. I don't know, here are the speeds, The good thing is give some info to my teammates. Maybe they can knowledge from that, and it will be good the team to be in the front for sure. Here is a long race. So whatever qualifying is not really important, but I think we have a great car here all around. So I love this place, and we'll see what we got in the end of the day.
He loves this place, we can tell. That's Carlos Munoz.
22 of Simon Pagenaud putting his car through the paces. He is your points leader. 58 points the advantage for Simon Pagenaud, led by 48 going into Mid-Ohio. Was able to bounce that up by 10. He comes off of turn number 3. Joining us for the rest of this qualifying session, high atop the main grandstand, Nick Yeoman takes Simon Pagenaud into turn number 1.
Simon Pagenaud arcs that car into turn number 1, looking for that 7th pole of 2016. Some pretty significant sparks out of the bottom of that Menard Chevrolet as he rockets out of turn number 1 and heads to Jake Query.
Biggest debate Nick and I've had all year. What color do you call this machine? I had said highlighter yellow. We settled on tennis ball green, I believe. Either way, green is go and green is fast. Simon Pagenaud, very, very good out of turn number 2.
Stays very high between 2 and 3. Gets the car to the bottom of the racetrack as he makes the exit of turn number 3. Very high against the outside retaining wall. Nick, 1 lap in the books, 218.405.
He is the points leader. Started on the outside of the front row here 1 year ago. Pagenaud into turn number 1. Has that car right along that yellow and white striping. Exits turn number 1. Hard on the accelerators. He heads to turn 2.
As you know, when he exits turn number 2, keeps it right in the middle of the racetrack, maybe about a half a car lane, if you will, towards the high side. Takes it now to the bottom out of turn number 2. No problems at all for Simon Pagenaud.
You know, Davey, our multi-screen monitor gives us the in-car camera ride right now with Simon Pagenaud. That's a cool shot.
It's a great shot, and it just tells you how much input they have in the wheel between each of the corners, and it's so different. And as a driver, you know, you got to get used to exactly, you know, what feel that car has. And it looked a little free a few times to me, but he fell off that last lap too and dropped the time down a little bit. So that last lap looked like it could have been just a little bit free.
Checkered flag is out, 217.721, the 2-lap average. Pagenaud's second lap at 217.042. Benefits, Davey, to going later in the qualifying session?
Well, I think the biggest benefit is, as we talked about earlier, teammates. So you can tell your teammate, hey, you know, for example, Scott Dixon, he can go tell Tony now and Charlie, hey, man, the thing was extremely loose. You know what I mean? So they could do a few changes, whether it's aero or mechanically, small changes, you know, to try to help that car out. And I think that's the biggest advantage that you have.
As we mentioned earlier today during our practice show, been racing here since 1971. 19 races from 71 to 89. All-time winner here, A.J. Foyt with 4 wins. Rick Mears has 4 poles here. And Davey, we talked about it in our show earlier today, and I'm sure you'll echo these sentiments. This is certainly where open wheel racing belongs, and it was great news earlier this week when it was announced that a 2-year extension had been reached.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. And the only bummer for me, to be really honest with you, as much history as this place has, and as much as I heard about it, and the champions that have won here, you look at the book, through my career from 95 to 2011, we never raced here, you know, and so I was in the game a long time, but unfortunately never had the opportunity to compete at this racetrack. And it's always one that I thought I would have had a lot of fun on. I love this place, but drove around it plenty in the 2-seater, but never had the opportunity to actually race on this track.
Let's go back to pit road and Jim Murphy.
Well, Graham Rahal gets out of the car here. He's got a pretty happy look on your face. He seems satisfied with the run. Davey Hamilton said it almost looked like it was a little bit of a handful out there.
Yeah, I mean, it was pushing pretty bad. You know, in 1 and 3, actually, I think we just missed the balance on the aero setup there a little bit. But, you know, we trimmed out a lot more than Munoz, and I think, you know, probably could have run the same speed or a little quicker if we could just get the balance right. But we missed it, and that's okay. You know, there's a lot of good cars that come. This is early days, so I don't know where they'll, you know, put us, but we're going to focus on the race car really hard, try to make it quicker for tonight.
Well, that's Graham Rahal. Now down to Dave First.
And here with James Hinchcliffe, I know he can count to 4, so counting to 3 is probably no problem at a place like Pocono, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can actually count to 6, if you can believe it.
Really?
Well, they keep 6 gears in the car. I can't, anything past that, I struggle.
Start using toes and stuff, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we got the fast 6, so you only want to be in the top 6 in qualifying ever. You got 6 gears in the car. You only care about finishing first, so I really only need to know 1 through 6.
That makes sense then. good day so far today. The morning practice session, second quit.
Yeah, it went really well. The Schmidt-Peterson team, first and second in first practice, is obviously a good way to roll off the truck. And we tested here last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, like a bunch of the guys did, and we made the cars, a good chunk better actually. We were okay at the test, but I think we've come back a bit stronger, and we'll see. Conditions have changed a lot. Track's a lot hotter. Winds picked up a lot more than it was this morning, but hopefully we can still put the number 5 car up front.
I was going to ask you. You sit here and you kind of take in the conditions a little bit. What do you do inside the car then to make up for that?
Yeah, well, we don't have the windsock that we always use at Indy on top of the pylon, but we got a couple flags here, on some of these timing stands. We'll be watching that down the front straight to see how hard it's blowing into turn 1. It's obviously going to affect the balance going through there. Probably going to get a little bit of a push into turn 2, maybe hit the soft limiter there, but we'll make small adjustments inside the car from driving, from the tools that we have, and just try and get this thing around here for 5 miles.
And count to 6. Good thing your car number is only 5, so.
Exactly.
Good luck today.
Thank you.
That's James Hinchcliffe.
Speeds continue to climb. Good lap for Ed Carpenter. 2, in fact. The first one, 2:17.896. Lap number 2, 218.954. The 2-lap average for Ed provisionally on the outside of row 1, 218.424. And Davey, I don't think we can state enough just how difficult it is. It speaks to the abilities of Ed Carpenter. I mean, there's a rhythm you get into by racing week in and week out, and I mean, he's an oval-only guy, but each and every time he does climb into the cockpit, he's a front runner.
One great thing about it is he has such a good team that's on the track week in and week out. So when he's not in the cockpit, he's on the pit stand, and he's still staying involved, learning the cars, part of the setup. And one thing with Ed on that, from the first lap to the second, pretty big change. So he either, as a driver, made some changes in the cockpit, made some adjustments, whether it was anti-roll bar or a weight jack or whatever he may have done, to gain a lot of speed on that second lap, or he was just maybe so conservative on that first one just to see what the car was going to do, had confidence, and came out and picked up over a mile an hour on his second lap.
So we've 5 qualifiers now have made attempts here today. Carlos Munoz is P1, 219.647. Ed Carpenter provisionally on the outside of row number 1 at 218.424. Graham Rahal on the inside of row number 2 for now, 218.204. Simon Pagenaud at 217.721 miles per hour. And Scott Dixon, slowest of our 5 qualifiers, at 215.337. Davey Hamilton, the guy going through the warm-up paces right now, one of the best of all time in Sebastian Bourdais. And as we start talking about the silly season, I think the reassuring thing is that I think everybody associated with that race team, Jimmy Vasser, Kevin Kalkoven, and others, and Sebastian Bourdais, they all seem to want to get a deal done for the foreseeable future with Bourdais so he can stay with that race team.
Yeah, and wisely so. As you said, one of the best. I mean, you look at the wins that he has, and the guy is up towards the top of the sheet. One thing about it, he's not really an oval guy. He's not thrilled with ovals. This is not his forte. He does fairly well at them. He has opportunities to win them at times, but he just doesn't like them as well as he does the street and road courses. That's really what he loves. So he just kind of gets by on these ovals, although we've seen him in positions to almost win a few of these things. So obviously he's getting more and more comfortable. We'll just see how he runs today.
Let's hear from Ed Carpenter. Jim Murphy's with him.
Speaking of somebody who really likes to run on the ovals, Ed, a couple good qualifying laps out there. They seem to be something that, most of the guys are having trouble matching.
It's a tricky day. The conditions are a little different, especially with the wind than when we practiced earlier. So, that's when it's hard to be early in the line. I think you'll see as this line goes through, teammates are going to help teammates. So we'll see where we end up. It is tricky. There's a lot of different downforce levels out here. Wish I could have got that first lap back. Once I got my tools adjusted where I wanted them in the car for the second lap, it was pretty good. Wish I could have had a couple of those. Would have felt really good about where we'd end up. Right now, I'm not sure where we'll end up.
Any lessons for the teammate?
Yeah, I've already talked to him, though.
All righty, you're way ahead of us there. That's Ed Carpenter.
So, Ed Carpenter, kind of echoing what Davey Hamilton said, spot on in terms of making adjustments on that second lap. Said it was he wished he had back. Nick Yeoman, lap number 1 in the books for Sebastian Bourdais, 216.124.
Yeah, currently only good enough for 5th quick, so Sebastian Bourdais going to have to hustle that hydroxy-cut Chevrolet through turn number 1. He jumps on the accelerator, exiting turn number 1 on his final lap, heading to turn 2.
Way that car is in terms of its paint scheme, it kind of blends in a little bit with some of the pavement that we have here at Pocono. But of course, that orange accentuation on the top leaving turn number 2. Sebastian Bourdais was a little loose out of turn number 2, now into 3.
He's coming off of turn number 3. He'll point it down the main straightaway. Sebastian Bourdais very high along that outside retaining wall, then back to the middle of the racetrack. We'll see if lap number 2 was quicker. It was not. Pretty consistent run. Not going to be happy with it, we don't think, Davey. 2-lap average for Bourdais, 216.263.
Yeah, I agree with it. He's not going to be happy with it. But then again, I still think, oh, yeah, he kind of wiggled around down there, hit the bumps, got some sparks underneath of his car, coming out from underneath of his car, kind of wiggled around down in turn 1. But I really think that Bourdais is okay with it. He's going to be the race guy. He doesn't want to go out and hang it out and qualify and have a mistake. I think he's the guy saying, hey, this isn't my favorite place. The ovals aren't my favorite things. Let's get in the race and let it play out.
So 6 qualifiers are in the books, and we'll continue as we watch Will Power go through his warm-up paces. We'll have his qualifying run when we come back to Pocono.
The best drivers on earth aren't going to push the limits of man and machine riding on just any old piece of rubber, which is why Firestone is the tire of the Verizon IndyCar Series. So when it's time to celebrate the 100th running of the Indy 500, no one knows more about celebrating than the tire that has more Indy wins than anyone else. Because at Firestone, we don't just make tires. We make champions. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
Planes racing by your seat at 265 miles per hour. Pilots withstanding up to 10 G's of force right in front of you. Experience the thrill from closer than ever before. Red Bull Air Race World Championship. Witness the world's ultimate motorsport series at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, October 1st and 2nd. Tickets now on sale. More info at redbullairrace.com.
From the Firestone broadcast booth in Pocono, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Speaking of Verizon, sponsorship is on the car. The number 12 of Will Power, he sees the green flag as he makes his way down the main straightaway. The run is underway for Will Power, Nick.
3 qualifying starts for Will Power here at Pocono. He started 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. You better believe he'd love to do a little bit better. Kicks up a ton of sparks at the entrance of turn number 1. That car looks pretty stable. That silver and red Verizon Chevrolet for Team Penske headed to turn 2.
Sun really sparkles off that machine, doesn't it, Nick, of Will Power as that number 12 Verizon machine. Boy, he is very, very clean. This appears to be, to the naked eye, a really good lap that is now 2/3 the way completed.
Long Pond straightaway is what he completes as he sets up for turn number 3, works his way down the main straightaway, narrowly missed that outside wall. 1 lap in the books for Will Power, pretty good one, 219.046 miles per hour. Nick, he's into turn 1.
Yeah, watching a lot of drivers mark down the front straightaway. They move off that outside wall, down about a lane, and then right back up against the wall to arc it into turn number 1. That Verizon Chevrolet smooth through 1, Jake, as he heads to you.
Little bit of sparks as he entered turn number 1. No problems now into turn number 2. Will Power again. Left side tires were down along the yellow line at the entrance to turn number 2, but not an issue at all as he works his way now into turn number 3.
Left side's barely touched, especially with the left front, that yellow line. Checkered flag is out. The run is in the books. Lap number 2, 218.189. 2-lap average provisionally on the outside of row number 1 for Will Power, 218.617. Back to Jim Murphy.
Pagano's finished with his run. Lap 1 looked really hooked up. What happened on lap 2?
Well, you know, it's one of these days we missed the balance. It happens. You know, overall, I think the Menards car has been pretty good. So it's a long 500-mile race, so I'm not too concerned about qualifying today.
Conditions changed from this morning. Was that a factor?
Yeah, it's certainly more windy, but the temperature is still pretty cool. So the track was okay. It wasn't too bad. It's just how to anticipate the downforce level being lower compared to practice and getting the right balance.
Simon Pagano, we'll keep an eye on him here tomorrow. As he said, it's all about the race.
Davey, we've been at racetracks before, and certainly when they repave them, they put the asphalt down. You can actually see the seams from top to bottom of the racetrack. I don't recall that any time in the few years that we've been coming here now that's really an issue here. In that regard, it seems to be pretty smooth all the way around.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they've talked about a few bumps getting down into turn 1. I'll have a whole better feel for it after a few hours when I get some rides out in the two-seater to get an exact feel of this track. But it seems there's a few more bumps down in turns 1, but the rest of it seems pretty consistent, and the seams in this track usually aren't a problem.
Now, you can't lose focus, you can't lose concentration, but I guess you do have a couple of opportunities to maybe take a breath here because this main straightaway and that quote-unquote backstretch, those portions of the racetrack are so long.
Yeah, one thing about this place is the most difficult part is right now, qualifying. You're trying to get everything out of that car that you can, and you're taking it right to the edge no matter what. I mean, Graham Rahal a little bit tight, so he's trying to keep that front end from coming up next to the wall. If you're a little bit loose, chase to the back of the car, which is much more difficult here, by the way. So you're hanging it out here. But when it comes race time, you do have a chance. You get in rhythm. It's, as Simon said, it's 500 miles. It's a long race. And you get that comfort. The time slowed down a little bit. You're working on your car in dirty air. And that's when it becomes fun. It starts becoming fun.
Jack Hawksworth was 11th quick in the practice session this morning. Green flag is out. ABC Supply, the title sponsor. Nick Gilman, Jack Hawksworth in turn 1.
And this is a young man from England who just needs a little good luck here at Pocono. 2 years ago in a practice accident, had a big hit, had some internal bruising, and missed the race. Last year he failed to finish as well. So this could be a big redemption weekend with that title sponsor, ABC Supply, on the car, Jake.
Looked like he actually wanted the car to go down low, and he just kind of kept it in that middle lane, did Jack Hawksworth. No problems out of turn number 2. Now he takes that ABC Supply machine into the 3rd turn.
218 plus for Jack Hawksworth, as we mentioned, 11th quick. White flag is out for Jack Hawksworth. Lap number 1 of the books, 217.960. We'll recap his run after we rejoin Jim Murphy.
Will Power almost fast enough to put you out there on the provisional pole. Not quite. Thoughts on the run? You're not sitting here with a great big look of confidence on your face.
Yeah, just trying to connect the car. You know, that's the problem here. It's quite loose into one, and then a lot of push off. So it's hard to. Yeah, I think you got to try just have one consistent balance, and you can work on that. But yeah, we'll think about it and come out tonight so we can get a better race car.
So this afternoon session of 30 minutes is going to be very important.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Yeah, we need time here. We didn't test here, so definitely need to work on the car.
That's Will Power.
Lap number 2 is in the books. It's quicker, 218.142. The 2-lap average, 218.051 provisionally inside of row number 3 for Jack Hawksworth. Okay, Davey, explain what Will Power may have meant for those that don't know by the term connecting
the car
to the car.
So exactly, and that's a key point. What he has going on is not that much fun. As he said, he drives down in turn 1. As he turns in, the back of the car is wanting to come around. So it's wanting to be loose. So he's having to counter steer the car to keep the thing going straight. But then once he gets to the middle of the corner, the car settled in the corner, the balance changes, and all of a sudden you got understeer. So it's two of the worst things. You're loose getting in, but then coming off, you can't get the thing to turn. So that's connecting the car, making sure that the car takes one nice arc through the entire corner, not doing 2 or 3 different things throughout the corner.
Nick Yeoman, you've had a chance to call the few laps now. I would imagine your vantage point as you take a look at turn 1. Is it easy to your eye after you see a car go through there and then later you hear the time and speed report? Pretty easy for you to determine who looks fast and who doesn't through there?
I'll tell you what, Mark, from this vantage point, I'm so high up. I'm actually right across above the start-finish line. It's a little hard to tell. I'm watching the sparks that are kicked up as Max Chilton starts out on his warm-up lap. Watching how much sparks I see kicked up from those race cars tells you about that ride height and certainly how low they're going or how heavy they're going on the fuel load. So it's hard to tell from this vantage point, but you're right. Turn 1, with the amount of banking there and the momentum that those drivers carry through, that's the part of the racetrack that I think you have to nail if you're going to have a good lap here at Pocono.
Back to pit road and Dave first.
Yeah, the guys towards the back of this qualifying order have the advantage of seeing exactly maybe what's going on out there. And that includes Helio Castroneves, who's had both Simon Pagenaud and now Will Power go out and make some qualifying runs. What are you learning so far here?
Yeah, we are looking to their data, and looks like it's very... Unfortunately, the wind came up a little bit stronger this afternoon and changed quite a lot. So both cars were different, and that's what happens. You're like, oh, great, thanks. Now, so
you've learned nothing, basically.
Absolutely right. So you better go with your guts or your butt telling, basically. So we're going to try to do our best. We're looking strong. Hitachi car is really, really strong. So I have no doubt we're gonna go for it.
How about the job this team did? We're getting ready to see Juan Pablo Montoya out there. There was hardly anyone that didn't touch that car after the accident in practice to get it right, to get the 2-car back out here and ready for qualifying today.
Yeah, this team is surprised every day, to be honest. And to be honest, actually, the car might not look beautiful, but it's ready. And guarantee JP is going to go out there and do his thing that he always does. And but big congrats to Team Penske to put this thing together in less than an hour.
Good luck this afternoon.
Thanks.
Elio Castroneves mentioned the 2-car for Juan Pablo Montoya. It's got some parts from Pagenaud's car. It's got some parts from Elio's car on it. Tim Cindric told me it's going to look like a spotted cow during qualifying, but the main thing is, will it go fast or not?
Lap number 1 is in the books for Max Chilton. In fact, getting ready to complete lap number 2. Lap number 1 at 216.828 miles per hour. Lap number 2, consistent, just not very fast, 216.551 miles per hour. Provisionally, Max Chilton, a 2-lap average of 216.689 miles per hour. And Davey, we heard Will Power. It's interesting to note. You'd like to think that we know, as we've said before, there's a checklist going into that final warm-up session, but some of these teams are going to use that as a find-out session for sure.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's key. Every time that these cars are on the racetrack, they're learning something. It doesn't matter what they're doing, even though this is a qualifying sim. And you know, as we talked about, seeing the sparks down into turn 1, well, that attributes to a lot of different things, which is you're getting the car too low to the ground to try to get the max amount of downforce that you possibly can. They're on new tires, so sometimes the tire pressures aren't up yet, and so it allows the car just to be a little bit too low. But every time they're out there, they're trying to learn. And Montoya, the next guy out with the spotted car, I guess we want to call that for now. But I assure you, tomorrow when that thing's on racetrack, it's gonna be perfect.
Jack Hawksworth provisionally. Jim Murphy on the inside of row number 3, the 2-lap average, 218.051.
The ABC Supply driver very pleased, I'm sure, with that run here with this big weekend of the ABC Supply 500. So provisionally 5th. I see a lot of guys up here kind of shaking their heads and hanging their heads. You seem pretty comfortable and confident. You got a bit of a grin about that run.
Well, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it now, right? Whether it's good or bad. So, yeah, smiling. It's a nice day. And, yeah, the car ran fine. So the guys did a good job. I think we pretty good job this morning. And, yeah, the car felt good and put 2 good laps together. So, yeah, it was fun, and we obviously got practice tonight. That's when it really counts. Try and get the car dialed in tomorrow, and as you say, the ABC Supply 500, hopefully we can get both the ABC Supply cars up there and have a good race tomorrow.
Well, your boss, Super Tex, is always very energetic. Any special pressure this weekend, or is it just business as usual?
I mean, I put more pressure on myself than anyone else can, so yeah, just enjoy the weekend and get the most out of it we can.
Enjoy it then. That's Jack Hawksworth.
You know, Davey, ABC Supply and A.J. Foyt, they've been together for a number of years now, and that's a company that is very, very active in terms of sponsorship activity at the racetrack each and every weekend. They always bring a lot of associates and vendors and clients in, and they do a great job of entertaining people at Verizon IndyCar Series events. You
know, it actually fits this series very well, because one thing with the IndyCar Series and the Verizon IndyCar Series is the hospitality and the engagement to the drivers and the activities that we do are the best of any series out there. So with ABC bringing their customers and their clients and their contractors in, and being teamed up a long time, like I said, with A.J. Foyt, one of the best that's ever been behind the steering wheel, and probably the most entertaining guy in the whole pit area. So it's good to see those guys here. I'm glad it works for them as a business, and they reinvest in our sport.
Green flag is out for Juan Montoya. He heads that machine into turn number 1. Nick Yeoman's got him.
Yeah, that Frankenstein Chevrolet sets up for turn number 1. Bits and pieces of a lot of different Team Penske cars. Has those left side tires right along the yellow line, streaks it out of turn number 1. That's where he had the problem in practice. That car looks awful smooth, though. Juan Montoya setting up for turn 2.
Typical Montoya fashion. He wasn't overly concerned after that incident, Juan Montoya. He's got the silver on the back of the machine, and it is quickly going out of my vantage point now because Juan Montoya is on a flyer here.
He's through through turn number 3, and he'll point it down the main straightaway. Juan Montoya well off the outside retaining wall. 1 lap is in the books. Nick, lap number 1, 218.027 miles per hour.
All things considered, that's not a bad first lap considering the amount of pressure put on this team from the practice accident. Montoya streaks it out of turn number 2, takes a pretty wide line as he hammers through the accelerator. That car right along the wide outside wall as he sets up for turn 2.
Montoya was asked in a press conference earlier today if he thought anybody could eclipse a record lap that he already held here. He said, I don't think so, but if so, I'd like it to be me. That's not going to happen, Mark, but this looks to be a pretty clean run for Juan Montoya.
When he completes it, we'll be halfway through this field of 22, and some pretty big bullets left in the proverbial gun, as they say. Davey, way off. 216.547, the 2-lap average for Montoya. 217.284 for now, good enough for the inside of row number 4.
Well, you got to remember that he has had no laps since he crashed a car.
Right.
He put this thing together. That first lap, I was like really impressed, and that shows you how much confidence that Juan Pablo Montoya has in Team Penske and all the guys and how they could do their stuff. I just think on that second lap something happened. He just got a little bit loose or stepped out or got a little tight. They just haven't had a lot of time to really get this thing balanced. So even with that time, running those kind of speeds, I'm pretty impressed.
And with this team, obviously, that 30-minute session, whatever's wrong with that race car,
Absolutely.
I think we're assured of the fact they can get it fixed and be competitive on race day.
That car's going to go straight into the garage area. They're going to strip it right down again, check every little thing, get that thing on the setup plate, check every shock spring, anti-roll bar, everything that they have to, and have that car perfect for him in the afternoon session.
We've seen a few times this year the benefits of a multi-car team. What's happened with guys like Montoya and Kimball today are a perfect example when you have the ability to throw a lot of resources from other teams or other cars, we should say, toward one car on the team.
Well, these massive teams that we have here that have a lot of cars, Penske, Ganassi, and Andretti. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to keep all these cars on the racetrack, not only just financially to have all the team members, but just all the pieces and the organization and the structure to make sure they're all, all done properly. So when something like that happens, man, it's just amazing how they can all group together. All the cars are the same, and and that's another tribute to the series on having Dallara as the car of choice, which is by far the best choice they could have ever made, and have pretty much everything the same within each camp.
Since Nazareth is no longer in existence, this is essentially the home track for one Marco Andretti. Nick Yeoman, points it toward turn 1 for the first time.
And Davey talks about those monster organizations. Andretti Autosports got the car sitting P1 right now in Carlos Munoz. So we'll see if Marco Andretti can back up that Honda speed that we've seen so far from the Andretti Autosport camp. Smooth through turn number 1, Nazareth, Pennsylvania's Marco Andretti headed at 2.
He's had good runs here on what he considers his home track. He hosts other drivers when they come out to the area. Marco Andretti already in turn number 3.
Boy, Jake Query's awfully close to that racetrack. I mean, he's high atop it, but there's absolutely no question whatsoever when those cars make their way underneath him. White flag is in the air for Marco Andretti. Lap number 1 is in the books. 218.221. Nick, it's a good run so far.
Yeah, good enough so far for the 4th quickest time, so we'll see if he can back it up and start in the front half of the field. Blue and white, the colors on that United Fiber and Data Honda Smooth out of turn number 1. It's Marco Andretti.
I'll take a page out of your book, Mark. I'll let folks listen when Marco Andretti goes by. There goes Marco Andretti. Nazareth, Pennsylvania's own, out of turn number 2. Keeps it on a high line as he enters now into turn number 3.
Setting up for turn number 3. Pretty clean exit off of turn number 3. Just like that, the checkered flag will pop into his view. We'll see if he backed up that first lap with a good second lap. Marco Andretti, pretty consistent, 217.803. The 2-lap average provisionally on the outside of row number 3, 218.012. To Jim Murphy.
Max, I'm going to ask you about your run, but more importantly, you as a rookie. What's it like out there trying to drive this place for the first time?
Yeah, I can see why they call it the Tricky Triangle. It's a completely different beast of a track when we were here 2 weeks ago. So as a rookie, it's a bit of a challenge. I wasn't overly confident in that run. It felt a little bit too on the nose, a little bit loose, but I gave it my best shot. I tried to lift in the manner that it didn't unsettle the rear as much as it already was. But there's 4 Ganassi cars. We'll work together and move forward in the 500-mile race tomorrow.
Lots of learning going to occur now, but somebody who's very confident is standing there now with Dave first.
Yeah, Juan Pablo Montoya climbs out of the car. Given everything else you've had to deal with today and the team has put together the race car for you, happy with that run?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Everybody at Team Penske did an amazing job, and made a mistake this morning. We pushed too early, trying to stay out of Simon's way, and it really hurt us, but you saw the result. And for qualifying, it was good. It's just too neutral. It was too neutral the first lap, and I maxed out the tools, so I was a little too timid on the second lap.
Turn 1, what is it? What makes it so difficult here at Pocono?
Nothing. It's a little bump getting in, and you just got to be patient. It's going to be a long day tomorrow. I think we had a good race car earlier, so we'll see what it does.
Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Juan Pablo Montoya, talking about patience, but man, Davey Hamilton, it's hard to be patient sometimes at a racetrack like this, huh?
Well, when it's 500 miles, you need to learn it quick. And when the green comes out, you'll see these guys going crazy. And remember, there were 6 and 7 wide last year, if I recall, going down this front straightaway. So that's really not patience in a 500-mile race. But they say that it's just hard to keep yourself under that focus.
The driver going through his warm-up paces right now, Mikhail Aleshin, driver of the number 7 team for Sam Schmidt, and led 33 laps at Mid-Ohio in a late race incident after a trip to pit road. Took away what was the most promising day of Mikhail Aleshin's young Verizon IndyCar Series career, but it may have given us a glimpse, Nick Yeoman, as to what's to come for Mikhail Aleshin. That red, white, and blue machine heads toward turn 1.
And was Dave first and Davey Hamilton just talking about patience? That's not a word that I think is necessarily in Mikhail Aleshin's vocabulary. He knows one speed, Jake Query, and that is fast. The Russian off of turn number 1 as he begins his qualifying run.
And he so far has had, in what was a long practice session and now in this qualifying run, a good weekend. But can it all come together for Mikhail Aleshin? When he leaves turn number 2, he seems to get a little bit of momentum to work his long way into turn number 3.
He was P1 after the 2-hour session, extended a little bit because of those cautions. His top speed at 221.932. Lap number 1 of the books, Nick, 220.642 for Mikhail Aleshin.
Gets a nice amount of applause from the fans here on the front straightaway. Kicks up a lot of sparks into turn number 1. He did that on that first lap as well, though, so that is not a sign that he scrubbed off any speed. Red, white, and blue, the colors on that car. And here comes Mikhail Aleshin on a possible pole run to turn 2.
Fans call him the Mad Russian. He'll be a happy one if this keeps up. Not a problem at all for Mikhail Aleshin. Again, keeps it high now as he sweeps his way into turn number 3 at Pocono.
What shade there is envelops that long pond straightaway between 2 and 3. Sees the checkered flag. He's to the middle of the racetrack. Did he back it up? Indeed he did. Lap number 2 at 220.249 miles per hour. The 2-lap average for Mikhail Aleshin, your provisional pole sitter, 220.445. Back to pit road and Jim Murphy.
Hometown boy Marco Andretti is watching that run. You're sitting there low, and whatever he's had for breakfast, I want some of that. How does your run stack up against what we just saw?
Well, it's slower. I'm just, we knew that he was going to be quick. He looked pretty stout in practice as well, so he's sort of in a league of his own right now, so it's impressive to see.
Must feel good, though. You guys with the Honda camp, great history there, but you've struggled this year. It seems like this weekend, you guys have got some raw speed in the cars.
Yeah, it's similar spec to Indianapolis, and we were pretty strong there, so we need to definitely capitalize tomorrow.
All right, well, keep an eye on Marco Andretti as he looks out there with a little bit of envy towards Mikhail Aleshin.
So, Davey, great run by Mikhail Aleshin. And, for whatever the reason, some teams just show up some race weekends and they unload fast and they stay fast. So far, it looks like that's what they've done with the 7 car.
Well, and talking to Marco Andretti, he knows what that feeling's like. A few years ago, he was the dominant car all day long. Nobody could even touch him. And talk about a league of his own. He's been there, so he knows how that is. They're just trying to find that little bit of magic and get it back. Now, right now, with Mikhail, I noticed one thing coming off of turn 3 that I haven't noticed with any other car. He was able to come off onto the front straightaway, like in the middle of the racetrack, and shoot down to the bottom of the track, trying to make a shorter circle out of this place. Every other car out there, it's either been understeer, pushing right up to the wall, or just not that confidence to turn that car because the back end wants to come around. We'll see how Hinch, his teammate, does right now coming off of turn 3.
Going through the warm-up paces, Tom Hansing has the green flag in his hand, and Nick Yeoman, the run for James Hinchcliffe is underway. way.
And if there is one bullet that Mikhail Aleshin may have to dodge, it's this one. It's his teammate, this next car out. Here comes James Hinchcliffe, arcs it into turn number 1. He's got the left side tires right along that yellow line, takes a nice arcing, quick angle out of turn number 1, the driver for Schmidt-Peterson.
Excuse me, James Hinchcliffe had said that, Mark, he was confident about the way the team set up cars on these super speedways. Keep in mind, if Indianapolis is a barometer, Hinchcliffe was a pole-sitting contender from the get-go. Then he came out into practice, and we saw that he has a really fast race car.
220.290 his practice speed. He was P2. Now, he's not quite a pole speed, 219.472, but Nick, is still a fast one.
Yeah, going to have to find a lot on this final second qualifying lap if James Hinchcliffe wants to get his way onto the top step of the podium and grab that pole position, or even to get that car onto the front row. That black and gold Honda headed to turn number 2.
That gold really accentuates. The sun just bounces right off of it, and it's trying to keep up with that machine that is working its way quickly now around this racetrack. The tricky triangle, and James Hinchcliffe works his way now through turn number 3.
Yeah, Jake, we're a long way from you, and that's a great point. It's almost like he has a spotlight on top of the engine cowling. Lap number 2 in the books, very consistent, 219.454, the 2-lap average for Hinch. Provisionally inside of row number 2, 219.463. Back to pit road. Dave first.
Just a quick word here with Mikhail Aleshin. You should have seen everybody with the red, white, and blue SPM Racing Schmidt-Peterson guys. They were high-fiving. Big run for you guys. Will it stay, you think?
Well, I don't know if it will stay or not, but I know that the guys did a fantastic job, you know, we have this great speed, and all team is working really well to bring SMP Racing car number 7, you know, up there. So I just, my job is to do the best out of it, and I mean, to be fair, we were really on the limit.
We'll see what happens. Mikhail Aleshin right now, provisional pole, has never started up front in a Verizon IndyCar Series race, at least not yet, Mark James.
Davey, let's face it, for him to master Mid-Ohio the way that he did and then turn around and back it up with a vastly different animal like this, and for now be P1, I think Mikhail Aleshin has arrived and seems to be here to stay.
There's no question about his talent.
Right.
I mean, he can get the job done. What he's been doing is coming to these tracks for the second time. He's been learning this series. He's in a different country. There's a lot of things that the cars are different from what he's used to. The guy's absolutely getting the hang of it. He's with a great team. They're getting the job done, and it's exciting to see. He almost, like you said, at Mid-Ohio, just a little bit of luck, he could have won that race. And right here, he said he was on the limit. I agree. I'm sure he was on the limit, because around this place, to go that fast, you know the car's on the edge, although I think that the balance is pretty good with both those cars. I watch Hinchcliffe, and when you have 2 laps, almost identical speeds, that tells me that car is stuck down, it's got good grip, it's drivable, and so it's very consistent. So I like that more out of a car than anything.
Well, as we continue to move toward completion of this qualifying session, just a handful of drivers left. 8, in fact, ready to roll off of pit road to make a qualifying attempt. Currently, Tony Kanaan is going through the warm-up paces. TK and that bright blue NTT data machine works his way off of turn number 3, points it down the main straightaway. Green flag is in the air, and the run of Tony Kanaan is underway into turn number 1, Nick.
That's another one of those cars that it is not hard to find, because it's just a brilliant blue as Tony Kanaan takes a high line, kicks up some sparks, arcs it into turn number 1, keeps that car about a half a groove off the bottom of the racetrack, trying to carry a lot of momentum as Tony Kanaan heads for turn 2.
Tony Kanaan works his way into turn number 2 right now. He has started in the 4th spot here at Pocono, his best career start. Tony Kanaan now high side of the racetrack, works his way into turn number 3.
Toward turn number 3, Tony Kanaan gets it to the outside retaining wall that upon exit glides it toward the middle of the racetrack. White flag is out. First lap for Tony Kanaan, 218.685. We'll recap his run after we head to pit road and Jim Murphy.
Real quick with James Hinchcliffe here. Your teammate was on the provisional pole. You tried to get him. Wasn't quite there.
Yeah, no, I mean, huge credit to Schmidt-Peterson Motorsport. You know, we had good cars this morning. Mikhail obviously topping the session, and he's doing the same again here. That was a stellar lap. You know, I was hoping we have enough for Carlos and maybe try and lock out the front row, but, you know, so far, first and third is a really good result for the whole team, and hopefully we can say there's still some good guys to go, but very excited so far.
Well, we'll be watching James Hinchcliffe. There's 200 laps, not just 2, tomorrow.
Tony Kanaan off of turn number 3, left sides to the bottom of the racetrack. A little farther off that outside retaining wall. Checkered flag is in the air. Lap number 2 a bit slower, 2:18.527 off of 2:18.685. Davey, for Tony Kanaan, the 2-lap average, 218.606. And boy, the first couple of rows, I think, pretty good starting position here at Pocono.
Boy, absolutely. And it's a 500-mile race, so it doesn't mean everything, but it's always best to be towards the front. You always want to be in that position to kind of be in clean track just in case something happens. And, you know, Kanaan, the fastest of the Ganassi cars right now, so a little bit of hope out of that camp right now. It just seems that they're struggling somewhat, but right now, whether it's the information that Chilton and Dixon has given them for Kanaan or what it is, I mean, definitely a better run.
So are we going to hear words like fuel strategy and tire management as much this weekend as we would maybe at road and street courses, even though, again, fuel strategy played a huge role in the 100th Indianapolis 500?
I really don't think tire strategy is going to come into play. I do think there's a big opportunity for fuel strategy to come into play just because it's the Indianapolis 500 prime example. You never know when that yellow is going to come out, who's going to try to stretch it to the end. If it's just a laid out race, same for everybody, no, the fuel strategy won't be there. But it's happened here before. It happened with the guy that's on the track right now to win the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
A life-changing amount of fuel left in that car for sure for Alexander Rossi. So briefly recapping, Aleshin and Munoz provisionally on row number 1, Hinch and Power, row 2, Kanaan, Carpenter, row number 3, row 4, Rahal and Hawksworth, row number 5, Marco Andretti and Simon Pagenaud, row number 6, Juan Montoya and Max Chilton, row number 7, Sebastian Bourdais, and our slowest qualifier so far, Scott Dixon, with a 2-lap average of 215.337. Green flag is out for Alexander Rossi into turn 1.
Had a good run in practice earlier this morning. He was 4th quick. Spent the majority of the last 3 or 4 years in Formula One. Gone to a lot of different racetracks all around the world, Jake Query, but I'll guarantee you Alexander Rossi's never seen anything quite like the tricky triangle. Smooth run out of turn number 1.
Of course, he comes from all those racetracks, road and street course background. Can we now say Alexander Rossi, oh, he got a little bit loose out of turn number 2. I was going to say, is he a super speedway specialist? 1 for 1 at Indianapolis. Alexander Rossi tries to keep it a little cleaner through turn number 3.
And a pretty clean exit off of turn number 3 is Alexander Rossi. He's about a foot off that outside retaining wall, runs the second groove. First lap is in the book, a pretty good one, 219.256 to pit road and day first.
And we're here with Tony Kanaan. Pretty happy with that top 5 here so far.
Yeah, I think we took a conservative side today, and it worked out. But we knew that we were going to be too stuck. But we rather put it on the show. It's a 500-mile race, so we have a pretty good race car.
Dixon went out, your teammate earlier, Max Chilton. Were you able to gain anything from those guys going out earlier?
Yeah, I mean, it helps a lot. You know, obviously they didn't qualify the way that they wanted it to qualify, so we definitely took that information and dialed a little bit in before we went out for our run. But it is what it is. I think, you know, obviously we would love to qualify a little bit better, but it's a 500-mile race.
There you go. We'll see where it shakes out. Thanks. TK, top 5 so far here this afternoon.
First lap, 219.256. Lap number 2 at 219.397. Lap number 2 in the books, 219.326 for Alexander Rossi, the 500 winner. Provisionally, Davey, on the outside of row number 2. An impressive run for that Honda, especially on a race weekend where a guy's visiting a track that he doesn't have a lot of experience at.
Well, right now, the most impressive thing, I think, is some of these teams. You look at the Schmidt-Peterson team, first and third with Aleshin and Hinchcliffe, and then outside of both those guys, the first 2 rows in second and fourth is Munoz and Rossi. So right now, Andretti and Schmidt taking up those first 2 rows.
Takuma Sato rolls off the pit road, and while he runs through his warm-up paces, we'll take a break, come back. You're listening to qualifying coverage in preparation for the ABC Supply 500 here at Pocono Raceway.
Hi, I'm Mario Andretti. I was born a race car driver, and as it turns out, so was my grandson. It's been a while since I won the Indy 500. But when I see Marco race, it makes me happy to know that he's on the same tires that helped me win, Firestone. Why? Because you may be born a racer.
We'll use this Rossi
Firestone can help make you a champion.
Whatever you drive a Firestone.
Hi, I'm IndyCar driver Joseph Newgarden, here with a message from Outrun the Sun. Did you know if you fill the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to capacity 12 times, you have the number of Americans diagnosed with skin cancer every year? 12 times. Skin cancer is preventable. Join me in pledging to be sun smart. When you're outdoors, protect your skin by wearing sunscreen, sunglasses, and hats. Learn more at outrunthesun.org.
From the Firestone broadcast booth in Pocono, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
220.445 miles per hour. Nick, that's the mark they're chasing. The latest to do so is Takuma Sato.
And just noticed here in the last couple minutes, a pretty significant breeze has picked up, at least here down the front straightaway. Takuma Sato already making his way out of turn number 1. Headed to you, Jay Query.
Sato had a child in pit road earlier today taking pictures of him. He was waving while looking over the data in the cockpit of his car. Was it enough data to put him with a good qualifying run? He keeps the car fairly high out of turn number 2, now dives down low into turn number 3.
Was only 16th quick in the practice session this morning. His warm-up lap at 218.842. Lap number 1 is a good one. Takuma Sato, 220.018 miles per hour, Nick Yeoman.
How about that for the ABC Supply Honda for the Japanese driver Takuma Sato? Can he find a little bit more and put that car on the pole? Very smooth through turn number 1. Here comes Takuma Sato.
I don't know how track temperature savvy this particular, or how the temperature affects this track, but all of a sudden it is completely cloud covered for Takuma Sato. The first to be the beneficiary of that today, Takuma Sato now into turn number 3.
Again, the warm-up lap at 218 plus, lap number 1 at 220.018, lap number 2 for Takuma Sato. It is a fast one, 220.117. The 2-lap average, 220.067 provisionally on the outside of row number 1. Okay, driver analyst, beneficiary is some good timing in terms of the cloud cover here at Pocono.
Well, I think a couple things that may happen. Cloud cover does help, and the reason it does, it cools that track off just that little bit, just to add some grip so it's not so hot. The oils aren't coming out of it as much, and the wind has changed a little bit, so we have, it looks like a pretty stiff wind down the front straightaway. One thing that does, if you have enough gear, put it down into 5th to pull that wind, but then you get the tailwind down the back straightaway with most of this racetrack, it could be an advantage. But another thing with the clouds, if it just gets a little bit cooler, if it just cools the ambient temperature down just a little bit, it helps these engines run just that much better.
And Jay Query, from your spot above turn 2, you say it's not a little bit cooler, it's a lot cooler.
Significantly cooler. To Davey's point, there is a wind. Now that wind, as it is right now, kind of comes at you as you work your way in the exit of turn number 2. So it kind of pushes you maybe to the high side of the track at the apex of the turn. But the big thing is the fact that this entire track now, the entire triangle is covered, and there's really only one big cloud in the sky, but the sun is behind it right now. So shade covering now for those, at least for right now, that are going to finish in qualifying. At any point, of course, those clouds could move out of the way, but it's an awfully big one, Mark. I think we're going to see cloud cover for the rest of this qualifying session.
Good run for Alexander Rossi, the 500 champion. Jim Murphy, 2-lap average, 219.326.
As you mentioned, a very strong run for Alexander Rossi. We've seen some teams and drivers with a lot of experience struggling here in conditions today. You guys have been very consistently quick today, and you put down a great run, even though it's probably your very few laps you've had here. What pulled it together?
You know, I think the Andretti Autosport car rolled off strong, and you know, they obviously had a great deal of success here last year, and the Honda package seems very suited to Speedway. So the fruits of their effort over the winter is showing through, and you know, hopefully we can have a good day tomorrow.
We'll keep an eye on him tomorrow. That's Alexander Rossi. He is the Indy 500 champion. Today first.
Yeah, sometimes smiles are hard to come by in the Verizon IndyCar Series. I'm looking at Takuma Sato, and there is a big smile on your face. Well, what happened between this morning and now?
Well, it's a fantastic work from the team. You know, all the engineering work, really details. And the car's very, very fast, so I was comfortable and confident, and I really enjoyed these 2 laps.
I don't know if you caught this or not, but as soon as you went out, this huge cloud came over Pocono Raceway and really cast a shadow, if you will, around this course. Do you think that had anything to do with it?
Yeah, I think we organized from ABC Supply, just get the shadow the more roof.
The sponsor did that for you. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything helped, and obviously we have a good support here, and the whole engineering work and mechanics obviously build a supercar. So I'm very happy, taking second right now. I don't know if someone go faster maybe, but still we look in good shape.
Looking ahead to the race, what kind of race car do you have, Taka?
Well, it's a qualifying race is totally different scenario, but we had good feeling for the racing, and hopefully this evening we have half an hour practice, and that's showing some good performance, so finding more speed for that.
Good luck in the race.
Thank you.
Takuma Sato smiling down here on pit road.
Lap number 1 for Charlie Kimball in the books, 216.896. But Jake, a tip of the cap to that crew after that big hit this morning. Amazing they got the car put back together so he could go qualifying.
Yeah, and I got the impression there's probably an awful lot of downforce in that car just to make sure it sticks. They don't have any problems, as Kimball had talked about. You can kind of tell it, Mark, because it doesn't look like he has the freedom to move that car around as much as others. He's already out of 3.
Yep, out of 3. It headed down the main straightaway. Charlie Kimball, checkered flag is in the air. Lap number 2 is in the books. 216.938. The 2-lap average, Davey, provisionally outside of row number 7. 216.917. So you get it in the show, then you go back to work on it, much like Montoya, and then you get ready to find out what kind of race car you have in that final session.
Yeah, and I think back to those times, Mark, look, they're almost identical. As we've seen a couple of guys like Kanan and a few of these guys in Hinchcliffe that has the times almost identical. That tells me that they're flat out, the car's stuck down, they can't get any more out of it. It's just very consistent laps. So although Charlie's down on the charts right now, I think they have a lot of downforce. I think the car's consistent, and now they just need to free it up a little bit and to his liking.
I mean, he ran well. He was in the top 10 when that incident occurred in that practice session. But as we talked about earlier, Davey, you just can't automatically assume when you transfer a setup from one car to the other, you can't automatically assume that it's going to stick.
Well, that's right. And reason is drivers have different styles. They like a different feel. And even though you try to give them exactly the same, well, it's not exact because it's shock absorbers could change just a little bit, and the spring rates could be just that slight bit different. But I'll have to say they're pretty consistent, and it should transfer over. But that doesn't mean one driver's style is the same as the other driver's style.
I like the comments that we heard from him in the first part. I mean, how many times did he say, hey, a tip of the cap to the crew? I mean, he knows how much work that they had to do, and he wanted to publicly thank them for the efforts that they undertook to get him back on the racetrack.
Well, he knows how much work they had to put in, and I guarantee you right now that even though he's down the chart, he's going to be happy because it's a solid race car. They have time to work on it tonight. He knows he has a fantastic team with Chip Ganassi and that group. And really the only thing that surprised me on this whole sheet right now is Dixon. I mean, the guy that we're used to seeing up towards the front is, right now the inside of P9, which is the slowest of the field so far. But that doesn't even, 500-mile race, that guy could be a winner just as equal as Aleshin, who's on the front row, man. You never count him out.
That guy started last at Mid-Ohio, won a race. I think he could pull it off at Pocono.
The guys, you never, ever count him out. I remember at Indy one year, a guy, he was one of the guys that was there to have the opportunity. He got in a pit road incident on the first pit stop. I'm not so sure he didn't go a lap down, but if he did, it was close to. Went to the back, and we never talked about him. Then all of a sudden, he's finishes third or something in the Indianapolis 500. So he's a guy with patience. He can get it done. These are long races. He knows how to go about it. Even this race last year, if we recall, his teammates all had accidents. They all had issues. We never talked about Scott Dixon because I don't think his car was that great. He just kind of hung out. But at the end of the day, when the checker flag comes out, he's there.
Utmost respect to TK, Dixon, Juan Montoya, all those guys, the best of all time. Ryan Hunter-Ray, Graham Rahal, those guys. I would imagine for the fans, it's kind of cool to see names like Aleshin and Sato and Munoz and Hinch at top of timing and scoring in this qualifying session.
It's guys that have been in this game. They know what they're doing. Aleshin, I could say he's probably the youngest out of all, not youngest, but the least amount of experience of all those guys in our series. But yeah, no, it's good to see and keep it mixed up. And that's one thing I love about the Verizon IndyCar series and these Dallara chassis. It's so close. And I have to give hats off to the league to make sure that the Honda and Chevrolet power are the same. Now, I do think that there is a little bit of disparity between, I think, the Hondas on the big ovals, like here in Indianapolis, definitely have an advantage. And you see it's Honda. First 5 cars are all Honda. The first Chevrolet we see is 5th with Will Power. But then it gets the road courses and street courses, it seems the Chevrolet have an advantage. So they need to work on that just a little bit to where they're equal no matter what track we go to. But it's not that easy.
Let's join the run of Elio Castroneves. He's in front of Jake Query in turn 2.
Castroneves right smack dab in the middle of the racetrack. He got back off of that bottom line fairly quickly in the exit of turn number 2. Helio Castroneves here in Pocono.
Yep, Helio Castroneves works his way off of turn number 3. Ran only 15th quick, but you don't know if he was working on a race simulation or not. Lap number 1 in the books is a good one. 219.668 for Helio Castroneves, Nick.
He was the pole sitter at Phoenix and Long Beach, so looking for that 3rd Verizon P1 award of the season. That car looks pretty smooth through turn number 1. Took a wide arcing exit. Carried a lot of speed, though, Jake, at the exit of 1.
He has sat on pole before in Pocono, has Castroneves. That car number 3 works his way now out of turn number 2. Helio Castroneves keeping it just off of the outside retaining wall as he works his way now between 2 and 3.
Off of turn number 3, down the main straightaway. Helio Castroneves well off of that outside retaining wall. Checkered flag is out. Lap number 2, another good one. The 2-lap average provisionally for Helio Castroneves, the inside of row number 2, 219.781. Jim Murphy. Okay, we were standing by for Charlie Kimball, and we'll get back to him if we get the opportunity to do just that. Again, Charlie had a 2-lap average of 216.917. Great run for Helio Castroneves, Davey.
Yeah, great run, and 2 really consistent laps again like that. I mean, as a racer and a driver, knowing that a consistent car is the most important thing for these 500-mile races, and with all the pit stops they're going to make, I know there's adjustments that can be made, but just coming out of the box, man, I tell you that's a really good run for Castroneves.
3 qualifiers are left, the 19 of Pippa Mann, that number 19 for Dale Coyne this weekend, the 21 of Joseph Newgarden, and Davey, I know Connor Daly's doing what he's doing with a bit of a heavy heart this weekend, driving that number 88 machine in memory of his close friend, Brian Clauson.
Yeah, just a sad, sad day. And, and the way I came up in short track racing, Brian was living a dream. He led some laps at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway this year. He went to a sprint car race that night and won it. He was on a challenge to run 200 races within 1 calendar year, which he was pulling off. And by the way, he was winning about 20-25% of those races that he was in. And by the way, he lost his life the way the only that he could do, and that was dominating the Belleville Nationals in a midget. And just a very sad day. Still unbelievable, to be honest with you. And a guy with that much talent and that much opportunity, and Brian Clauson. But yeah, Connor's car painted up just like we've seen Brian's car at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So a special thing for, and I thank Dale Coyne for doing that.
I know this is difficult on his family and his friends, but this also has to be so very, very difficult for the Bird family. They worked so very, very hard to put that program together and did so with Brian in mind.
Yeah, well, I had a call with David Bird and that night, and he is one of the guys. He's the one to make that 200 races happen. He had a lot to do with it, and just tried to call and comfort and tell him I'm sorry. And a great family. His father helped me make my first Indy 500. So, I have a long friendship with the family, and they do great things, and they give young guys opportunities in this sport, and they're going to continue to do that. It's just they had a guy that could win races in any kind of car, and they were doing that, and they come from the short track world as well, with Rich Vogler, by the way, who was matter of fact, Brian Clauson was on a run to maybe change the record books within the USAC series by having the most USAC wins, and I think as young as he was at 27, that he was going to take care of that. I mean, he was going to be the guy to beat that record, if anybody. And the whole family, his dad, his fiance, and oh geez, it was just, fortunately I knew Brian well. We had a lot of good times this year together. He was a mentor to my son, and trying to help him in some opportunities, and just a sad day. He was a great guy.
Well, we will speak more about that throughout the course of this weekend, most assuredly. Let's head back down to pit road. Jim Murphy, you've caught up with Charlie Kimball.
Yeah, Charlie Kimball having a chance to talk with the assembled media here. Charlie, the run to RI, was it conservative? Were you guys just going to put it in the show?
Yeah, we were definitely conservative there. We rolling the backup car out. I have the utmost confidence in the guys, but it makes sense to just be smart, make sure that the car's right. Felt rock solid, so I think I could have gone a little bit harder. I cracked the throttle and won the 2 laps, and I think that's fairly understandable after this morning. But the Novo Nordisk guys and everybody at Chip Ganassi Racing worked so hard to get me ready for qualifying. I really appreciate their efforts, everyone's efforts. The 83 car felt good in qualifying. We'll put some downforce in it, work tonight in warm-up, and I think we'll be okay.
How did you feel after the incident this morning? You were a little sore going into the session.
Yeah, not just my pride, I think, but I got a couple of bumps and bruises. Anytime you hit the fence around here, it's a big one. So we'll ice some things tonight and be ready to go for tomorrow for 500 miles.
We'll be watching Charlie Kimball there, Mark.
Pippa Man, 2-lap average, 211.267 miles per hour. And Davey, the practice session this morning at 210.701, trying to connect to the race cars. Will Power talked about a little bit earlier on.
Yeah, she hasn't been in a car for a while, and she's not going to be happy with that. But on the other side of the coin, I think her last time in the race car was Indianapolis, and she had some struggles there as well, and just really off the pace here to follow that. But Del Coyne and the team will continue working with her and trying to find that magic and that feel that she needs to up that speed a little bit.
Seeing that 21 car now waiting to get the release from race control and get his qualifying run underway. That, of course, the car of Joseph Newgarden, a teammate to Ed Carpenter this weekend. A lot of speculation, Davey, about where Joseph Newgarden may land in 2017. A lot of it has to do with maybe some availabilities that may or may not materialize elsewhere. If nothing else, it's good for guys like us to speculate as to what changes, if any, there'll be in the driver roster going into 2017.
Yeah, well, my hope, and I mean, Joseph, he's so talented, and I know guys are looking at him, and, a few years back they were talking about maybe he'd be the American Formula One hope, and he probably could be that guy if he found the right opportunity. But, I really hope he stays right where he's at. I think he has a good combination, a good partnership with Ed Carpenter Racing. He gets the job done. He could have won the Indy 500 very easily this year. I mean, he was one of the contenders to do that. But what I would also like him to do, for opportunity, is to see him in some other series and other divisions and racing more. And that's one thing that I give, back to Brian Clauson. When a guy races 200 times a year, it teaches you how to be good. Doesn't matter what, just a lot of confidence. And I think that's something that Joseph could, with the short schedule of 17, 18 races in the IndyCar series, that he has plenty of time to go out and do some other things. And whether it's sports car, whether it's fitted cars, NASCAR, whatever it may be, I think it would be cool to see a guy like him to go venture in and run Daytona and run some other races as well. But hopefully he stays full time in the IndyCar series.
Let's go back to pit road and Dave first.
Yeah, an opportunity to catch up here with Helio Castroneves. Looks up in the scoring pylon, third quick. I asked you earlier about what you learned from your other two teammates. You said not a thing. So I guess if you just do your own thing, it's okay, right?
I guess that's what happens. Hitachi Chevy is really, really fast, and certainly, all joke aside, they did help because we all have a similar situation, my different setup, but we're just trying to tweak a little bit here and there. So normally the guy goes in the back. When you have a teammates like that, it's just getting better. So, but starting in the front doesn't mean anything for the race. It's 500 miles. It's always good, but let's hopefully we keep up there.
You like this place, don't you?
I like this place. Last year we had a phenomenal car, and this year was just a little bit iffy. So, well, let's see Joseph now. Well, how is he going to do?
Let's see about Joseph Newgarden, huh? All right, good luck to you. Back upstairs.
Thanks, Dave. Good stuff from Helio Castroneves. As always, the warm-up lap for Joseph Newgarden, 219.091. Lap number one in the books. Nick Yeoman, a good one, 220.309 miles per hour.
And that's trending for second quick right now. So does Joseph Newgarden have anything for the Russian Mikhail Aleshin? That Fuzzy's Ultra Premium Vodka Chevrolet looks strong through turn number one on lap one. Jake, it looks strong through turn number one on lap two.
All of a sudden, the cloud moves out of the way, peels open the curtain for the sun to splash its way. The clouds moved out, the sun came down. Much warmer track, but now, Mark, all of a sudden, Joseph Newgarden is into the area of the track, still under some shade, trying to find that good speed he has thus far.
Lap number one at 220.309. Will it be fast enough? Lap number two, it will not. Lap number two at 220.082 miles per hour. The two-lap average for Joseph Newgarden, provisionally good enough for the outside of row number 1. 220.195. He gave it a heck of a ride.
He did, and you can see on the telemetry on the side of the car, the LED lights on the side. You could see it was number 1 for the entire track until he got to the front straightaway and got this headwind, and he just barely missed it, but it went to number 2, and so he was on pole running pace right down to the start-finish line, but just barely missed it.
So, Mikhail Aleshin, 220.445 miles per hour. That's the target for the 88 of Connor Daly.
Well, you know, Connor struggled this morning, but right now I think your front row is pretty well set with Aleshin. And here's what I love about this. The Schmidt-Peterson team, P1. The Ed Carpenter Racing team, P2. AJ Foyt Racing, P3, and Roger Penske, P4, and it just keeps going down. Andretti, with Munoz, the fastest Andretti car, in P5, and then you got Schmidt-Peterson again and Hinchcliffe in 6. So 5 teams in the top 5 spots. That's pretty cool.
Jake Query had a lot of things unfold on us there momentarily. You had an observation from turn 2.
I was just going to make the point, and clearly it didn't matter with Newgarden, but all of a sudden that one big group of clouds that the sun was tucked behind moved its way out just really for Joseph Newgarden and Connor Daly. So it appeared as though they might get a disadvantage there, but clearly didn't matter for Newgarden because that 21 car mark was awfully good. We'll see what it does for Connor Daly.
Yeah, Nick, your perspective right above us in the main grandstand. We see that large American flag right across from us. It's kind of flapping in the breeze, but plenty of sunshine certainly has returned here for the run of Connor Daly.
Yeah, it's been an awful nice day here in Pennsylvania to watch these drivers chase that speed and go for that pole run. And you're right, it has picked up the wind at times, and then it's died down at times. Sunshine, cloud cover. It's made for an interesting qualifying run. As final car out of the racetrack, Mark, it's Connor Daly.
Connor Daly will see the green flag, and we'll check his warm-up lap. Nick, it's at 211.025. Connor Daly into turn 1.
Yeah, so still a lot of searching to be done by that Dale Coyne group this weekend. Some sparks kicking out of the bottom of that number 88 for Connor Daly. Gave that car a good run, had a 6th place finish a couple weeks ago at Mid-Ohio on these ovals, though. A lot of learning for everyone to do. Here comes Connor Daly, Jake, into turn 2.
He keeps it actually fairly high as he works his way into turn number 2. Never really got that car down to the bottom of the racetrack. Connor Daly still keeping it high as he sweeps his way in through turn number 3.
Connor Daly on his run again. The pole speed at 220.445. White flag is out for Connor Daly. 214.745. Nick Yeoman, he's back to turn 1.
He'll arc that car into turn number 1. In fact, keeps it right up against the safer barrier into the entrance of turn number 1, and then diamonds it down right along the white and yellow line to try to arc that car and pick up as much speed as he sets up for the final time to turn number 2.
We will listen to the final qualifier as he works his way out of turn number 2. That's that 88 machine, normally number 18 of Connor Daly.
Jake has better luck with that than I had last year, Davey. I did that with Charlie Kimball, and he smacked the wall.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that was good or bad, but Charlie didn't like it, but you had good timing.
Checkered flag is out for Connor Daly. Second lap, pretty consistent, 214.768, the 2-lap average provisionally on the outside of row number 10. 214.757. The pole sitter, Mikhail Aleshin, down below. Jim Murphy, you've caught up with him.
When we see the green flag for the ABC Supply 500, it will be Mikhail Aleshin. How big is this pole for you?
That's amazing. Seriously, it's an amazing feeling. That's my first pole in IndyCar, and I'm so happy to bring up the car number 7 SMP Racing up there. The team did an amazing job. We had a couple of moments in turn 1, but I just decided to keep it flat and see what's gonna happen. So the wall didn't happen, but the pole position happened. So amazing, thank you.
Congratulations, Mikhail Aleshin, our pole sitter.
How about that, Davey? Thrilling for Schmidt-Peters. Look at Simon Pagano coming over, patting the guy on the back, giving him a congratulatory hug. First pole, that's huge for Mikhail Aleshin.
It is huge, and congratulations to him. And that's one thing that Simon knows what it's like to get that that first pole and be a champion. But they were teammates, great teammates, by the way. So it was nice of Simon to come down to offer his congratulations. And congratulations to Sam Schmidt and Rick Peterson again for, putting a great program together for those guys and getting Mikhail his first pole.
Jim Murphy, you've caught up with a team owner. Before we talk to Sam Schmidt, though, Dave First has caught up with Joseph Newgarden.
Yeah, Joseph Newgarden. Oh, so close, Joseph. Is there anything you could have done as you maybe second guess all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we could have stayed at what we had to start with. We rolled out with something, and then I was pushing my guys to do something different, and it's a team decision. Whether it's their decision or mine, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. We make the decision as a team, but I feel like I was pushing a little hard for something that probably wasn't the right thing, and hey, we were close. We just needed that little bit, and I think where we rolled out with would have been enough, and it's my fault that we changed it. I kept pushing them to change it, and it was close. So I'm disappointed for that. You always want to get the pole, but
do you learn something from that moment?
I don't know.
Trust your team. Come on.
Hey, it goes both ways.
But they trust the driver, though, too.
Yeah, you got to trust each other, right? It's a big unity that we have. We got a great chemistry and great group with our people, and sometimes I mess up, and sometimes we think about things the wrong way. Sometimes we think about them the right way. But yeah, today I think we could have probably had it. I think almost if we started with what we did. But congrats to Mikhail. Great job to him and Schmidt Peterson Motorsports. So. Not enough for today, but tomorrow is what counts, right?
We'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Joseph Newgarden, he'll start on the front row. Back to Jim Murphy.
In a sport where we spend a lot of time talking about names like Penske and Ganassi, today we're talking about Schmidt Peterson Motorsports, one of the smaller teams, but the team that continues to deliver. And Sam Schmidt, congratulations. How important is this effort and this accomplishment for your team?
Yeah, I mean, looking up, you got 3 small teams, so it's fantastic. Guys have been working so hard. After having the mistake at Mid-Ohio, that was a team mistake, win as a team, lose as a team. I think we had to put some of these guys on suicide watch, so to be able to come back from that and roll it out here and do what we did at Indy, both cars first and sixth, I think is huge. Thanks to Honda, obviously got a good power bound here when you're flat out. So I'm looking forward to the race. We were looking forward to it ever since that 70th lap at Mid-Ohio. So. The guys have just done a hell of a job. They're rubbing on every inch of this thing, and Mikhail's obviously, come back with a vengeance, and he was really fast here in 14, his rookie year, finishing 7th. So we had very high expectations.
Congratulations to Sam Schmidt here, and congratulations to our pole sitter, Mikhail Aleshin. He'll start up front here at the ABC Supply 500.
We have one more practice session to put in the books. We will do that at 5 p.m. Eastern. Very important for some of these race teams. Well, all of them, in fact, before we go racing tomorrow at 2:30 Eastern for the ABC Supply 500. And Davey Hamilton, let's face it, it's been a tough couple of weeks. Of course, we come back here with heavy enough hearts with the memory of Justin Wilson from a year ago and losing Brian Clauson and Bill Alsop and John Cooper. But I guess there's no better medicine than to go to the racetrack and do what we do.
The crazy thing, and I've been around here a long time. I've seen the unfortunate deaths that have came to lives too early, but that's what we do. We love this sport. We very early on, when I was really young, starting, Billy Vukovic Jr. and I were best of friends, and when that happened, I really was talking to myself, is this what we're supposed to be doing? Is this what I want to do? And there's no other thing, and these guys all love it. And the great thing with the racers that we have lost, and especially Justin and Brian, true champions, they would want nothing different for any of us either. So we're here, and this is the best medicine, as you say.
Mikhail Aleshin, first career pole. He'll be joined on the front row by Joseph Newgarden, Sato, Castro Neves in row 2. Row number 3, Munoz and Hitch. Row number 4, Alexander Rossi and Will Power. Row number 5, Tony Kanaan and Ed Carpenter. In row 6, Graham Rahal and Jack Hawksworth. In row number 7, Marco Andretti and Simon Pagenaud. Juan Montoya and Charlie Kimball in row number 8. Row 9, Max Chilton and Sebastian Bourdais. In row 10, Scott Dixon and Connor Daly. And in row 11, Pippa Mann starting last. Ryan Hunter-Ray did not qualify today because of damage that the car suffered in a one-car incident during the first practice session this morning. Again, don't forget, final warm-up at 5 o'clock Eastern. We hope you'll join us for that. A great job by Nick Yeoman and Jake Query out on the course as always. Some great work by Jim Murphy and Dave First on pit road. Our driver analyst today, of course, Davey Hamilton, the director of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network, is Wally Levitt. Indianapolis studio production operations by Chris Pollock, and our on-site producer and engineer is Rick Evans. I'm Mark Janes. So long for now from Pocono Raceway.
is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his 4th 500-mile race. A.J. Foyt, our winner. The flag will fly now for Tom Sneva and then for Al Unser. We will be talking with all of these drivers in just a moment. Lou Palmer is in victory lane as A.J. Foyt takes now his victory lap around the 2.5 miles of Indianapolis. A record-breaking end to a record-breaking month. A.J. Foyt, the 4th win at Indianapolis. A month that saw the 200-mile-an-hour barrier broken, not just in the practice where it is unofficial, but in the qualifying by Tom Sneva, our second-place car at the moment. And then, too, the first woman to enter, to qualify, and to compete in a 500-mile race, Janet Guthrie of New York City. But for the moment, the name is A.J. Foyt of Houston, Texas. The car is his, a Coyote. The engine is his, a Foyt V8. And happiness, fame, and fortune are his, too. He is the winner of the 61st running of the Indianapolis 500. Pat Sedan can
find Alexander Rossi almost rolling to a dead stop. Twin checkers are out, and the rookie will win the 100th Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Stay tuned for more on IndyCar Radio. IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
The white flag is waved. 1 to go for Jacques Villeneuve, but he's on his final lap, Jerry.
About 4 seconds is the lead time that he has. Can it hang together for another couple of miles? Oh, this is going to be great finish for Jacques Villeneuve into the number 2 turn.
And Villeneuve smoothly through 2, well off the wall, keeping a fine line down the back straightaway. Larry Henry. Jacques Villeneuve bringing it down the back straightaway. No traffic in front of him. Cleanly down to the white line. The crowd on their feet cheering Jacques Villeneuve. 1 more turn to go.
Jacques Villeneuve's crew, they won the pit stop competition, but this is even better. Through 4 smoothly. Jacques Villeneuve heads to the checkered flag, and here's Bob Jenkins.
The checkered flag is waving, and Jacques Villeneuve wins the 1995 Indianapolis 500.
Stay tuned for more on IndyCar Radio. IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
It will be, Jake Query, one of the most popular wins that we have seen in many years here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Tony Kanaan is going to win the 500-mile race.
Dario Franchitti has gotten out of his car. Dario Franchitti, if you were to ask him, would tell you that his greatest friend in this race, without question, is the man who right now sits behind the pace car negotiating turn number 2. Both hands still on the wheel on that hydroxy-cut machine, but the hands of everyone inside this oval and on the outside of it in the air right now. Mark, that's because Dario Franchitti just watched his good friend go past. He's a half a lap away under caution from winning the Indy 500, Mark. What a popular one it will be.
2004 Series champion completed every lap in an unbelievable season. 261 starts, 107 top 5s, 168 top 10s. He's led over 3,200 laps, including over 200 in Indianapolis. Chris Denari, he's going to fill that glaring hole in his resume.
His countryman and friend Elio Castroneves has won this race 3 times. The first one is always the sweetest. He's behind the pace car in turn 4 by King. Here comes Tony Kanaan.
TK has wanted this race oh so bad. The crowd will come to its feet and will salute the man from Brazil.
who will finally fulfill his dream. For Tony Kanaan, the 12th time is the charm at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Twin Checkers Way. TK has won the 2013 500. Let's go to Nick Gilman.
And I'll tell you what, Mike, there is not a dry eye down in this pit lane.
From the Pocono Raceway in Long Pond, Pennsylvania, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
Final tune-up before tomorrow's ABC Supply 500 here at Pocono Raceway. I'm Mark James. Welcome to Long Pond, Pennsylvania. Happy to be joined in the broadcast booth by Jake Query. Qualifying a couple of hours ago, and a first-time pole sitter in the Verizon IndyCar Series, winning his first career pole after coming off a race in which he led more laps than he had ever led in his Verizon IndyCar Series at 33 at Mid-Ohio. Mikhail Aleshin is P1 as we get set to go racing tomorrow. As we mentioned, happy to be joined by Jake Query. And Jake, whenever this happens, whenever we get a first-time winner, first-time pole sitter, it's always great to typically see the emotion, but I don't know that Mikhail displayed that much emotion. He's one of those guys that kind of lets his driving do the talk.
It was interesting, Mark, because in the press conference that took place after qualifying, well after qualifying for that matter, it was a very jovial press conference, not only for Mikhail Aleshin, but also for Joseph Newgarden. And Newgarden at one point joking, he said, well, you know, he's a nice Russian, and then had to catch himself and said, I'm not saying Russians aren't nice. He's a nice guy who happens to be a Russian. But Aleshin got up and was very, very jovial, like I said, and just was in a good mood. And Mark, Mikhail Aleshin said that it was difficult for him to put into words exactly what he was feeling, but he did feel like it was a great team accomplishment. And to his point of it being a team accomplishment, great satisfaction for him, but for the team as well, because the reality, James Hinchcliffe has a pretty fast car as well.
I don't mean to compare Mid-Ohio to the Indianapolis 500, but quite frankly, the last time we saw the level of dejection that we saw in Mikhail Aleshin was probably when J.R. Hildebrand hit the wall in turn 4 on the last lap. I mean, Mikhail was beyond despondent at Mid-Ohio. He knew he had a bad, fast race car, was just a victim of circumstance. It cost him a chance to get his first win, and certainly a very solid podium.
Yeah, and of course, it went from bad to worse for him, because not only did he have some bad luck at Mid-Ohio, but then everything just kind of cycled through, and it wasn't even as if he had the opportunity to get things back in grasp for him. I mean, it was that kind of a day where you went from having a dream day and try not to let yourself think too far ahead, Mark, and then all of a sudden you're chasing things and you feel like it's the old dream where every door you try to open is locked. That's how the second half of that race went for Mikhail Aleshin. But this practice session, Mark, this final warm-up, if you will, the 30 minutes of it is going to be interesting, because we don't know what Mother Nature's going to do tomorrow. We don't know what the circumstances or conditions are going to be. It's obviously going to be a little bit earlier in the day when they start the race tomorrow, but theoretically or hypothetically speaking, they are going to be on track, perhaps the most critical point in the 500-mile race in this time of day. So this is probably pretty important to see how this track feels for these teams.
Well, one thing's for sure, it was a spirited qualifying session. This final 30-minute session, important for teams like Ryan Hunter-Reay. He didn't get a posted qualifying time because of an accident this morning. That car is put back together. It's on pit road as we speak. Scott Dixon qualified 19th quick. Sebastian Bourdais 18th quick. Juan Montoya, an incident this morning, along with Charlie Kimball. They will start 15th and 16th, respectively. Simon Pagenaud, 14th quick. So, again, as we said, a fact-finding mission, this final 30-minute session before we go racing tomorrow. One of the guys that certainly had it figured out was the driver of the number 3 machine, Helio Castroneves. He qualifies 4th for tomorrow's race, and our Dave First caught up with him.
I asked you earlier about what you learned from your other 2 teammates. You said not a thing. So I guess if you just do your own thing, it's okay, right?
I guess that's what happens. You know, Hitachi Chevy is really fast, and certainly, all joke aside, they did help, because we all have a similar situation, my different setup, but we're just trying to tweak a little bit here and there. So normally the guy goes in the back. when you have a teammates like that, you're just getting better. So, but starting in the front doesn't mean anything for the race. It's 500 miles. It's always good, but let's hopefully we keep up there.
Okay, that's Dave First talking with Helio Castroneves. The live Dave First is such a better version. So let's go to him right now. And Dave, we're completing this day with gorgeous sunshine here at Pocono.
A sun splash, and that really wasn't necessarily the case in qualifying earlier, just a couple of hours ago, but it's up to 82 degrees, and the track temperature is as hot as we've seen so far today, up around 116 degrees, 60% humidity. Things heating up. Mainly, though, it's dry, and, well, we hope that continues through the course of the rest of the weekend here, Mark.
Yeah, and Jake, you're high atop turn number 2. You were for qualifying today, will be for the race tomorrow. For a couple of years now, that's been your vantage point, and I just, that's an impressive display of raw speed with those cars and drivers come off of turn number 1 and make the run down that long back straightaway.
I think, Mark, not only does it display the speed of these cars, but it also displays really just the daunting nature and the length of this track, because I can see them actually when I look across the way going into turn number 1, and it almost looks like the cars all of a sudden get stuck into some sort of like something is a vacuum that's slowing them down a little bit. Of course, that's not the case. It's just the naked eye. It's because it is such a long left-handed turn, and then they come into view just when they start to all of a sudden focus into my view and I can make out the color of the car. In the blink of an eye, they go flying past, but then they've got a long way before turn number 3. This is indeed tricky triangle, tricky indeed, Mark. I think it's a tricky triangle, I'm sure, to drive, but also just in watching it to try to figure out where exactly the areas of the best speed. There are lots of different lanes and areas to pass here. It makes for very exciting racing when they're all out there.
3,055 feet, that back straightaway. The front straightaway, 3,740. That long pond straightaway between turns 2 and 3. It's 1,780 feet. The turns modeled when this track was built in early 1970s, opened in 71 with Mark Donohue, your winner, the late Mark Donohue. The turns patterned after Trenton, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and Milwaukee. Turn 1 banked at 14 degrees. And I thought it was interesting, your James Hinchcliffe comments earlier today, and said to you, as a matter of fact, that turn 1 just looks like a wall as you start to come upon it with the banking.
You come upon it, and it's interesting. I'd mentioned earlier, Mark, I did the 2-seater, was very lucky to do the 2-seater last year. Martin Plowman was driving it, and we got in, and people ask me a lot, what's it like in the 2-seater? The first thing that you notice is that as soon as you pull away in the pits, you are immediately going the speed of the fastest roller coaster you've ever been on, and it looks like you're creeping down pit road when you're doing 60 miles an hour. But in this particular track, that turn 1 that he's talking about, you dive into that turn and do so really kind of so low that it felt to me in the car like you were almost going downhill, like suddenly you were going downhill, and then before you know it, turn 2 is there, and you're setting up for that. Hinchcliffe saying that turn 2 was like going instantly into a tube and ending up in Indianapolis, because it's very similar. But that turn 1 for certain, Mark, when you go into it, you have an opportunity to dive down pretty low. You also have an opportunity, as we see on the racetrack, as the cars can go 5, 6 wide at certain points, but then tuck back into a single file.
Is the Indy racing experience can best be described to the layperson like us? It's surreal. Just being in the cockpit and being a part of it, is it not?
One of the big arguments that you always hear, debates is a better word than argument, Mark, that you hear a lot of sports teams talk about is whether or not athletes, drivers are athletes. And I think, Dave, first, you get anybody to sit in one of those cars and do a couple laps in a 2-seater, you got a whole new perspective as to the mental focus, the physical strength it takes to master the car. One of the guys that tries to set up that car you're with in Mike Hull.
Yeah, Mike Hull here. We're taking a look at the number 9. Scott Dixon's back on pit road. They're making some, what I would describe as maybe some significant changes, dampers and whatnot, wicker on the front wing and so forth. You guys maybe have some work to do, work cut out for you tomorrow. You guys start 19th. What kind of changes, what are you guys working on here in this 30-minute session, Mike?
Well, first of all, we found out that Scott Dixon's braver than Buck Rogers.
Because we knew that already, though.
We kind of screwed up in qualifying for him. It was our fault, a team fault. We made a mistake there with the downforce level. But we're just working on getting a balance for the race. And so far, so good. we're just planning on chasing the racetrack for 500 miles tomorrow.
Scott, of course, a former champion here. He loves coming to this racetrack. You guys love coming here as well. In fact, I remember a couple years ago, it was a Chip Ganassi sweep here at Pocono.
It was great to win in 2013 when we did. That was 2013 when we did that. And that was a 100th win for Target. So that was a big deal for everybody in the company, certainly for Target itself. And everything fell our way that day with all three of our guys. So hope we can do the same on Sunday.
All right, we'll let you go. Looks like Scott's getting hit. Yep, there. And that's Scott heading back out on the race course as the time ticks. This 30-minute practice session is underway. Scott Dixon, boy, I thought it was interesting that Mike kind of owned up to the fact that, hey, you know what? That's on us. The fact that a former champion and the reigning Verizon IndyCar champion will start 19th tomorrow. Dixon, though, hey, I can guarantee you, he'll tell you, hey, it's 500 miles. A lot of time to make up a lot of ground here at Pocono.
P1 now, 217.194. Scott Dixon, Juan Montoya at 217.148. Good run for Takuma Sato in qualifying today. Title sponsor, ABC Supply, is on the car, and he'll roll off third tomorrow. The driver of the number 14 machine had a conversation with our Dave First after qualifying.
Sometimes smiles are hard to come by in the Verizon IndyCar Series. I'm looking at Takuma Sato, and there is a big smile on your face. Well, what happened between this morning and now?
Well, it's a fantastic work from the team. You know, all the engineering work, really, really details. And the car's very, very fast, so I was comfortable and confident, and I really enjoyed these 2 laps.
I don't know if you caught this or not, but as soon as you went out, this huge cloud came over Pocono Raceway and really cast a shadow, if you will, around this course. Do you think that had anything to do with it?
Yeah, I think we organized from ABC Supply, you know, just get the shadow of the more roof.
The sponsor did that for you. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything helped, and obviously we have a good support here, and whole engineering work and mechanics obviously build a super car. So I'm very happy, you know, taking second right now. You know, I don't know if someone go faster maybe, but still we look in good shape.
We're going to head to the race. What kind of race car do you have, Todd?
Well, it's a qualifying race, is totally different scenario, but we had good feeling for the racing, and hopefully this evening we have half an hour practice, and that's showing some good performance, so you know, finding more speed for that.
Day first with Takuma Sato, did not start P2, but will roll off P3. Let's head to pit road. Jim Murphy's keeping an eye on the car of Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Yeah, Mark, and it has been a long, long day here for the DHL crew. It started this morning in the first session. We weren't too many minutes in when he had that incident, got into the wall, damaged that car, and from that moment on, it has been just a struggle for these guys. It continues. They're down here working on the car, and they're making the kind of changes that you typically would not see folks making in this session. They're taking significant aero components on and off the car. They're changing the size of wicker bills on the front wings, for example. They have little tiny nuts and bolts, and they take a number of minutes to do. It's not something like changing a wing angle. So with only 30 minutes here, these guys are spending a lot of time making really fundamental changes, trying to make up for a lost effort. I tell you what, I have a feeling he's in for a very long day tomorrow.
13 minutes into this final warm-up session before we go racing tomorrow here at Pocono for the ABC Supply 500.
The best drivers on earth aren't going to push the limits of man and machine riding on just any old piece of rubber, which is why Firestone is the tire of the Verizon IndyCar Series. So when it's time to celebrate the 100th running of the Indy 500, no one knows more about celebrating than the tire that has more Indy wins than anyone else. Because at Firestone, we don't just make tires. We make champions. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
You're cleared into the track. Planes racing by your seat at 265 miles per hour. Pilots withstanding up to 10 G's of force right in front of you. Experience the thrill from closer than ever before. Red Bull Air Race World Championship. Witness the world's ultimate motorsport series at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, October 1st and 2nd. Tickets now on sale. More info at redbullairrace.com.
From the Firestone broadcast booth in Pocono, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Welcome back, Pocono Raceway. Final warm-up session before we go racing tomorrow with the Verizon IndyCar Series. Scott Dixon, Juan Montoya, Helio Castro-Neves, Mikhail Aleshin will power your top 5. Hinch, Kanaan, Newgarden, Munoz, Bourdais, the top 10. Pagenaud, Kimball, Rossi, then Chilton, Sato, the top 15. Andretti, Carpenter, Rahal, Hunter Ray, Hawksworth, Daly, and Pippa Mann, the 22 cars set to roll off the grid tomorrow. Jake, an announcement that some folks expressed some surprise, but a pleasant surprise nonetheless. It appears as though, and thankfully, Pocono going to be around on the schedule for a while. 2-year extension announced recently here.
Almost makes you think that some of the players involved should probably go into the ESPN poker tournaments as well, because Mark, in the reality, there was a lot of candid nature about the fact that it wasn't known whether or not they were going to come back, but the negotiations obviously came to the point where both Pocono, the raceway here, and the series itself found it to be of advantage. There was a lot of talk today as to whether or not drivers would want to kind of recreate that Triple Crown and try to get those 3 500-mile races somewhere and do the driver incentive for that. A lot of the drivers earlier today, as a matter of fact, those Penske drivers, all of them but Castro-Neves, so Montoya, Power, and Pagenaud were answering questions about exactly that, and we're simply saying, as drivers, we're going to drive what's on the schedule, and we welcome the challenge of the versatility of the schedule as it is presented. When you look at it and you see that Pocono's back, I do think it's good, Mark, because what it does is it gives you another one of those big super speedways that really challenge, I think, the overall endurance of a driver to last the 500 miles.
So if you add one next year, and that's Gateway, I think that's another move that people will applaud, especially an event and a venue that appeals to that Midwest fan base.
And you've seen a lot of races there. I think the thing about Gateway that will be intriguing is it's probably going to be a night race or later in the evening, partially just because it gets so hot in the St. Louis area. But Mark, you've seen races at that track. I personally, for example, have not been to that track to see a race there. So the nice thing is, let's face it, the epicenter of the fan base for the Verizon IndyCar Series, or at least the teams themselves, the majority of them in the Indianapolis area or the Midwest. So you're talking a nice 3.5, 4-hour drive towards a lot of people. There are fans obviously everywhere, but for the people in the Indianapolis area, it'd be a nice drive over.
Yep, no question. And the ownership management group made a lot of changes and improvements to that facility, and it was approved as a test venue a year or so ago, and so it only makes sense that the natural progression would be to hold a race there. Also qualifying well today, Joseph Newgarden in the 21 machine for Ed Carpenter Racing. Joseph Newgarden will roll off on the outside of row number 1. Newgarden with a speed of 220.195 miles per hour in post-qualifying. Dave first caught up with the driver from Hendersonville, Tennessee.
Is there anything you could have done as you maybe second guess all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we could have stayed at what we had to start with. We rolled out with something, and I was pushing my guys to do something different. And it's a team decision. Whether it's their decision or mine, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. We make the decision as a team, but I feel like I was pushing a little hard for something that probably wasn't the right thing. And we were close. We just needed that little bit. And I think where we rolled out with would have been enough. And it's my fault that we changed it. I kept pushing them to change it, and it was close. So I'm disappointed for that. You always want to get the pole, but
you learn something from that moment?
I don't know.
Trust your team. Come on.
Hey, it goes both ways.
But they trust the driver, though.
Yeah, you got to trust each other, right? It's a big unity that we have. We got a great chemistry and great group with our people, and sometimes I mess up, and sometimes we think about things the wrong way. Sometimes we think about them the right way. But yeah, today I think we could have probably had it. I think almost if we started with what we did. But congrats to Mikhail. Great job to him and Smith Peterson Motorsports. So not enough for today, but tomorrow's what counts, right?
Jake, that young man, the focus of the majority of the silly season speculation, but I'd say the chances are pretty good because of the fact there may not be much in the way of openings or an opportunity for movement that may do another deal with Ed Carpenter Racing.
I think you've got a couple of dominoes in play there, Mark. That of Juan Montoya is a big one, in the fact that the speculation and the conjecture has always been that with Juan Montoya's contract, Penske not officially announcing that they have opted to take another year on that contract for Juan Montoya, that perhaps Montoya would go into sports cars and that would open up that seat, and that Roger Penske would be opening that seat to go ahead and decide the time is now to get Joseph Newgarden. But at the same time, in fairness, I don't know that anybody from Penske's team, nor anybody from representing Joseph Newgarden, have made any sort of a statement to verify that that is indeed what is in the works or having been discussed. It's something that we talk about, but there's no actual proof to the fact that those things have taken place. Now, Tim Cindric has said, as I understand it within the last few weeks, that they would like to maintain a 4-car team with Penske. So whether or not that means 4 of the same drivers that they have right now, we don't know. The other one that's a curveball in this, I think, is Carlos Munoz, because Munoz is very, very talented. He has not yet signed anything full-time for next year. He has been very good at Indianapolis, which is obviously one of the cornerstones towards getting yourself an opportunity within the series. But Mark Joseph Newgarden did talk earlier today in the press conference about the fact that he said, I just want to be hired. And he did express, in the past when he's been asked about the question, he typically has simply said that he has to look to see what's out there. He has to, do what's the best situation for him. He did talk today very glowingly about Ed Carpenter Racing, the opportunities that they've gave him, the team itself. So it is entirely possible that while a lot of people thought maybe 3 or 4 months ago that it was a certainty that he was going to look to see what else is out there, that perhaps Joseph Newgarden does end up with the same team.
Well, let's give Ed Carpenter all the credit in the world, because when Sarah Fisher and Wink Hartman got out of the racing business in terms of team ownership, and won't say dissolved, but essentially shuttered that part of their operation, Ed was quick to step up and essentially assume that race team.
Yeah, and the thing about Newgarden, I think, that is so impressive, Mark, this is a guy that it didn't take him long to start winning as he came up through the ranks. There has been some acclimation period for him in the Verizon IndyCar Series, but this is a guy that in Indy Lights came right out of the box and was winning races. We knew that he was going to be good. He qualified well at Long Beach as a rookie. The promise was shown very early on. But again, I don't know how many ovals he had been on, but Mark, he won his first Freedom 100 when he was on an oval. He has shown an ability to be a duck to water in a race car. Doesn't matter which race car. Now, a lot of speculation and a lot of eyebrows were raised over the fact that he has attended a couple of NASCAR events in the last month and a half or so. One of them being right here in Pocono, but that also was something where he was with IndyCar to promote the actual event this weekend. So a lot of interest in Joseph Newgarden in his future, no question about it.
And I think he was very, very clear about that visit. I mean, he didn't dismiss the idea of getting an opportunity to run NASCAR, but I think this is where he wants to be, and he stated that, much like NASCAR drivers coming over and running the Indianapolis 500. If he gets an opportunity to do it, he's probably going to take someone up on that offer. Right. Well, again, probably the best story in qualifying was the first-time pole sitter. It's a guy that's been fast all weekend long and comes in with momentum, quite frankly, except for the call to release him off of pit road that cost him the race. Mikhail Aleshin really flexed some muscle at Mid-Ohio. He led 33 laps. He's led 37 total in his career, so he obliterated the amount of laps led coming into that race. 31st start for Mikhail Aleshin and his first pole, and our Jim Murphy caught up with him after qualifying.
When we see the green flag for the ABC Supply 500, it will be Mikhail Aleshin. How big is this pole for you?
That's amazing. Seriously, it's an amazing feeling. That's my first pole in IndyCar, and I'm so happy to bring up the car number 7 SMP Racing up there. The team did an amazing job. We had a couple of moments in turn 1, but I just decided to keep it flat and see what's going to happen. So the wall didn't happen, but the pole position happened. So amazing. Thank you.
He's followed this up with a pretty good session so far. He's rolling off P6. Well, Dave, first, there are banners on the back of the grandstands here, all focused on the legends of motorsports throughout the years here at Pocono, from NASCAR, names like Earnhardt and Petty. And also in open wheel racing, the late, great Mark Donohue, the first ever winner here. And you have a guest who's also on that banner, one of those banners back there.
Well, not only did he race here at Pocono, but Heck, he grew up here about a half hour away in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. We all recognize the name Mario Andretti. Thank you for the opportunity for a chat here this afternoon. When you come back to Pocono, I mean, you literally grew up just down the street here. What kind of feelings do you have?
Well, great feelings because obviously I was here. I raced at the very first race, you know, when the track opened. In fact, I was on the board when the track was being actually built.
The board of directors, not like you were bored racing here, though, right?
Board of directors,
yeah,
yes.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, but as time went on, the one year that I love to brag about, actually, it was 50 years ago, a couple days ago, when I won here in 1986. And what's really memorable for us as a family is that for the 500, Michael was on pole, son Michael. I won the 500, and there was a support race. At the time was ARS, which is Indy Lights. Son Jeff was on pole for that race, and he won that race. So the three of us clean house that weekend. And you know, it's one thing that we brag about that whenever I get the opportunity, because I mean, we could not have scripted something like that. And you can imagine, you know, my thoughts when I come up here. You know, there were other times when we had really great time. Michael won and all that, but that was a particular weekend that was just amazing.
It's like you guys had home track advantage or something back in '86.
Yeah, I think we were accused of that.
You guys are never accused of cheating at all. I don't know what you're talking about. So
that's right.
What is it like, I mean, when it was announced that the IndyCar series would be coming back to Pocono, that had to bring a smile back to your face?
No, absolutely, because IndyCars belong here. This track was built for IndyCars to begin with, and it's a wonderful super speedway that I didn't ask every driver, but whenever I have any conversation with current drivers, they all love it because it's very, very different from any other oval that we run. And again, the challenges are there, which everybody welcomes. And it's a nice, you know, relaxing area. It's got a lot going for it. So, and you know, for us, of course, it's close to home. I can sleep in my own bed. You know, so let's come back forever.
That's not so bad. Finally, of course, you're still a part of the Honda two-seat program. You actually get to drive out there as well, and I know that's a lot of fun for you.
Yeah, I love that. Obviously, it's wonderful that Honda is actually doing this program, and I'm driving on their behalf. And you know, they have a contest, as you know, shophonda.com, and some winner usually will ride with me on race day to start the race. But
you don't mess around. You get out there. You gave it the whole experience, don't you?
Flat out. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I get a kick out of it myself, to be honest with you, and again, you know, I think it's a win-win situation because we bring a lot of smile to the passengers. Everybody comes away, I think, with a little different appreciation for our drivers, for what our sport is about. So it's a fantastic program that IndyCar is having. Quite honestly, this Indy experience is really, really phenomenal.
All right, 30 years after the Andretti is swept here at Pocono, maybe it'll happen again tomorrow. Thanks for the chat. Have a great weekend, okay?
Well, I'll be keeping my fingers crossed.
It would be nice. Marco, son Michael as well. The great Mario Andretti back at his home track here at Pocono, Mark.
Jake, so very, very important to this series to go through that paddock. See Mario Andretti, see Dario Franchitti, you see Rick Mears in their active roles. Lone Star JR just recently stepped away from driving the pace car full-time, replaced by Sarah Fisher. A.J. Foyt in an ownership position, and Ari Lyondike Jr., part of the stewards program. Really cool to see these legends playing such a huge role in the sport as it continues to grow.
I think the thing about Mario Andretti, Mark, is as you are trying now in open wheel racing and IndyCar to bridge the great history of the sport with yet also trying to recruit and be appealing to new younger generations. Mario Andretti is a guy that transcends because his name is synonymous with the sport itself. And when Mario Andretti, who also kind of defines cool, is endorsing something, then I think it gives it an instant credibility.
Just about ready for the checkers on this session. Helio Castroneves is P1 with a speed of 218.824 miles per hour. Carlos Munoz at 218.043. Simon Pagenaud, Dixon, Montoya, the top five, will set the starting lineup now for tomorrow's race. In row number 11, the 19 of Pippa Mann and the 28 of Ryan Hunter-Ray. Row 10, the 9 of Scott Dixon, the 88 of Connor Daly. In row number 9, it's the 8 of Max Chilton and the 11 of Sebastian Bourdais. Row 8 features the 2 of Juan Montoya, the 83 of Charlie Kimball. In row number 7, 27 of Marco Andretti and the 22 of Simon Pagenaud. Row 6, the 15 of Graham Rahal and the 41 of Jack Hawksworth. In row number 5, the 9 of Tony Kanaan and the 20 of Ed Carpenter. Row number 4, the 98 of Indy 500 winner Alexander Rossi and the 12 of Will Power. Row 3, Carlos Munoz of the 26, the 5 of James Hinchcliffe. In row number 2, the 14 of Takuma Sato and the 3 of Helio Castroneves. Starting on the outside of row number 1, the 21 of Joseph Newgarden, your pole sitter, the first one of his career. The 7 of Mikhail Aleshin. After qualifying, we caught up with a happy owner, Sam Schmidt.
Today we're talking about Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports, one of the smaller teams, but the team that continues to deliver. And Sam Schmidt, congratulations. How important is this effort and how this accomplishment for your team?
Yeah, I mean, looking up, you got 3 small teams, so it's fantastic. Guys have been working so hard. After having the mistake at Mid-Ohio, that was a team mistake. Win as a team, lose as a team. I think we had to put some of these guys on suicide watch, so to be able to come back from that and roll it out here and do what we did at Indy, both cars first and sixth, I think is huge. Thanks to Honda, obviously got a good power bound here when you're flat out. So I'm looking forward to the race. We were looking forward to it ever since that 70th lap at Mid-Ohio. So the guys have just done a hell of a job. They're rubbing on every inch of this thing, and Mikhail's obviously come back with a vengeance, and he was really fast here in 14, his rookie year, finishing 7th. So we had very high expectations.
Well, Jay Query, as we get set to go racing tomorrow at 2:30 Eastern, obviously we do so with a very heavy heart, but the tributes that you'll hear sent to all of those that we have lost over the last year and most recently over the past couple of weeks, I think each and every one of them, to a man, would say, boys, let's focus on racing, and that's exactly what we plan to do for the ABC Supply 500 tomorrow.
I don't think that there's any question that Brian Clauson and his quest for 200 races in a year, for Justin Wilson, who was such a fan just of racing in general and in particular seeing younger drivers like a Brian Clauson during his rise come up through the Verizon IndyCar Series, would absolutely both love to be able to say, guys, go out there and put on a good show. Be safe and be clean. Mark, it's going to be a lot of fun. You mentioned that those rows are too wide when they start the race, but once they get going, I'll tell you what, it's anything but too wide. Awesome lanes going into turn number 1 for them to fan out, find their way through. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we certainly hope people tune in to hear what will be an exciting race here at Pocono.
Nick Gilman, Jay Query will have the action for you on the course. Day first, Michael Young, Jim Murphy will be on pit road, yours truly, and our driver analyst, Davey Hamilton, will be in the booth on race day tomorrow. Join us at 2:30 Eastern for the ABC Supply 500. I'm Mark Jane. So long for now from Pocono Raceway.
They've got slower traffic in front of them now. Al trying to get to the outside to pass Emmo right behind him. Emmo moves to the outside down in front of Howdy Bell. Moved to very close to that white line. They head for 3. Emmo may have him, Larry.
They're side by side. Emmo on the inside. Al caught in traffic. Goes high. They touch wheels. Al Jr. into the wall hard. Emerson Fittipaldi keeps on going. They touched wheels. Al Jr. into the wall, and Emerson Fittipaldi will lead them back to the yellow flag.
So that's racing, I guess. We have a winner now, most probably moving by now. Emerson Fittipaldi, who touched wheels with Al Unser Jr., has assumed the lead, and he's passed you, Jerry Baker.
We're on the last lap.
Oh, this is what you pay your money for right here. Here's Buddy Lucier. It's about, maybe